All right, it's 1 o'clock and it looks like we have a quorum. So uh, good afternoon and welcome to the New York City Planning Commission review session for Monday, December 13th, 2021. Before we begin our regular agenda, we have a special presentation by Karina Leung and Winston Von Engel with an update on the East New York rezoning.
Before they start, I just want to introduce this item and tell you that we are really excited to give you this update. This was one of our earliest neighborhood rezonings that we accomplished in this administration, which was the product of a significant amount of hard work from the Brooklyn office, which had worked collaboratively with neighborhood organizations for a number of years before this came into being. And we're proud of the work because there's been significant change in the neighborhood, and many of the things that we strove to do in the rezoning have borne fruit. And so we wanted to just share that with you. And so I turn the floor over to Karina and Winston.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. As we're nearing the end of the de Blasio administration, we wanted to give the Commission a highlight update of the results and accomplishments of the East New York Neighborhood Plan since its adoption by the City Council in the spring of 2016. As you are aware, as the chair just said, the East New York Neighborhood Plan was the first of the de Blasio administration's Housing New York neighborhood plans. And we broke new innovative ground here in the way that city agencies coordinate, in the way that we engage with local communities, new zoning tools, the nation's most aggressive affordable housing, inclusionary housing program in zoning, and significant major public infrastructure investments and housing commitments. And in this very working class, traditional working class neighborhood, the rigorous and robust outreach effort that we did here was much further advanced through the work of the community here in helping us to enrich and to inform the entire plan for East New York. If you've been out to East New York recently, you will likely have noticed the pedestrian safety improvements and the new landscape traffic median all along Atlantic Avenue that our colleagues and partners at DOT have put in with help from the Neighborhood Development Fund, as well as numerous all affordable housing developments subsidized by HPD and a new 1,000-seat school by the SCA. And if you ventured off Atlantic Avenue, you would see a transformed City Line Park, a new Callahan Kelly Park under reconstruction, and numerous other parks improvements. And you would see also a very innovative new first of its kind community youth center run by the NYPD and a Workforce One training center. So we're very excited to present this highlight to you today, and I'll hand it over to Karina to give you this presentation. Karina, thank you.
Thank you very much, Winston. So as Anita and Winston said earlier, we are going to be kind of showing you the highlights of the investments that have been made as part of the East New York Neighborhood Plan. And again, as they mentioned as well, this plan really was the East New York Neighborhood Plan and rezoning do represent a lot of firsts for the city and really laid the groundwork for a new approach to growth and development that's built on extensive engagement with communities, addressing the citywide and local needs for affordable housing. And as part of the Housing New York plan, emphasizing really like the neighborhood as a whole and doing holistic planning, and then making significant and coordinated investments in capital projects and programming alongside the rezoning to help support the needs that are created by the increase in population as the result of the rezoning. The city had made commitments totaling $267 million as part of the East New York Neighborhood Plan, with much of this from the Neighborhood Development Fund, which is also something that was created by the de Blasio administration in order to help support these needs and infrastructure created by the increase in population. So the East New York Neighborhood Plan came out of a years-long planning process. It started with a federally funded initiative called Sustainable Communities East New York, which allowed for an ambitious public outreach process to engage in community planning and visioning for sustainable growth in an area that has access to local and regional transit. This was followed by further engagement and DCP working in concert with other agencies and community partners to develop a plan that would support long-term growth and sustainability in East New York, Cypress Hills, and Ocean Hill. The neighborhood plan and rezoning were adopted in April 2016. And since then, we've been working on these commitments to make investments in the area. The East New York neighborhood plan was shaped by feedback that we had heard from the public, such as concerns about displacement, desire for small business support, and the need for more public spaces with improved amenities. So the plan included specific goals and strategies to support affordable housing, to encourage economic development, and to invest in community resources to make the area more livable. In order to implement the strategies of the plan, the city did make many commitments that are totaling over $267 million to fund projects and programming that support the goals laid out in the neighborhood plan. Both creating and preserving affordable housing was a top priority of both the administration and of this plan, which had set a goal of facilitating the development of 1,200 affordable units in the short term. We're pleased to report that we're now just a few units shy of this goal, and of new homes that have been completed or under construction in the rezoning area since 2016. Through strategies such as active monitoring and outreach to owners of rent-restricted units that are nearing the end of their regulatory term, identifying opportunities to bring existing units into rent-restricted programs, exchange for financing and tax incentives, and through a campaign to boost participation in HPD's Green Housing Preservation Program, the agency has managed to, or HPD has managed to preserve over 8,000 affordable housing units throughout all of Community District 5. And then lastly, the plan also includes strategies to protect and support existing tenants. So the chart on the left shows you the equivalent, the current equivalent household income levels for the New York City area AMIs for the equivalent affordability categories. The local median income for the neighborhood, for the areas shown in the bottom right, which include the Ocean Hill, or made up the Ocean Hill, the Cypress Hills, and the East New York North neighborhood tabulation areas, is approximately $44,000. So for the average household size of 3 people, that puts it the local median income in the very low income category. Of the units that have been completed and are under construction, the vast majority of these are affordable to people with incomes below 80% AMI, with over half of these being affordable to people with incomes at 50% AMI or below. The The city had heard concerns about displacement and began addressing them while the neighborhood plan was still being developed, including free legal services to tenants facing harassment or eviction, the East New York tenant protections such as right to counsel are in addition to and preceded actual tenant protection legislation that's been developed in the years since, including new limits on vacancy decontrol and building improvement charges and through the statewide Housing Stability and Tenant Protection Act. There are also other programs such as Home Fix and the Homeowner Help Desk that are helping homeowners stay in their homes, both in the East New York area, and as these programs have also been expanded to other neighborhoods in the city as well. A cease and desist zone was enacted in November of last year by the state with support from HPD, supporting local community organizations and getting the word out about this program. Additionally, there's the basement pilot program that is still active and includes 9 homes participating that are currently working to obtain their DOB permits to begin construction on those units. So Chestnut Commons is a project that will be bringing 275 units of affordable housing, with much of these being for low and very low income, very low and extremely low income households. This is located on a site that was the only sizable piece of city-owned land within the area that was rezoned. This area was previously industrial zoned with no active use on it, and so the city did have to really consider how it could add value to the community. What uses would make the best use for this asset. And early on, there was a need for a school that was identified through both the seeker analysis and through public outreach. It was we frequently heard that schools were overcrowded. So the city decided to allocate a portion of the site to a new school, and then the rest of it for housing and for some community facility uses. The site is located on the eastern end of the rezoning area. On the north side of Atlantic Avenue. There were several community visioning workshops that were held in order to get community input on the needed and desired housing types, community facilities that it would have, what types of retail uses it would have. And they also gathered input from people on site layout and urban design, as well as public art in the neighborhood. And some of the things that came out of this outreach was having having community and youth-oriented uses as a focus in this complex. There was also desire for retail along Chestnut Street, which is a street located between or on the eastern boundary of the site. And then a mix of housing sizes for both families and for individuals. Then lastly, there was a desire for flexible or low rent space that would be available to local small businesses. HPD had an RFP process where they did award the project to the Mutual Housing Association of New York, or MANI, along with the Cypress Hills LDC and the Urban Builders Collaborative in 2017. Cypress Hills LDC is an important partner in developing the project, and they will be occupying a lot of space in this facility, and their facilities will include a food manufacturing incubator, art and flex space, a computer lab, adult education classrooms, and counseling services. In addition to, there'll also be social services provided by Housing Plus, a campus of the Kingsborough Community College, and then there will be also some retail set aside for local businesses. The project is, as you can see, nearing completion and is planning there. It will be open in spring of next year. The next site that we want to talk about is the Atlantic Chestnut project, which is actually just east of the Chestnut Commons project that we just saw. This is a full block site that was, it did not have any current uses when it was acquired by Phipps Houses, which is a renowned nonprofit housing developer, nonprofit affordable housing developer. The site did, however, have past industrial uses and, you know, was quite large, and extensive remediation was required. Phipps was able to start construction in July of this year on the first phase of the project, which will comprise approximately 400 apartments. And after they fully develop the site, the complex will have a total of 1,200 apartments and a total of 60,000 square feet of commercial and community facility space. So that full build out you can see on the right, and the construction image on the left is from September of this year. More west along Atlantic, we want to show you the Linwood Park Apartments. This is located, as I said, this is located along Atlantic Avenue, where the city investments, you know, have made this road safer and less of a barrier to the J train, which is located one block to the north. Later on, you'll see images of some of the bulb outs, you know, that help with pedestrian crossings, as well as a bench. And I also want to point out that to the west of the site, the Sparendio Brothers Playground was also a site of investments where the city had revamped the basketball and handball courts. The project that you see is a fully residential 10-story building with 100 units that, again, is affordable to extremely low and many very low income families. It opened in October of 2020 and is the first 100% affordable HPD subsidized building with MIH that has been completed since the rezoning. This building was developed by LMN along with B&B Urban, which are both for-profit housing developers. You can see in this image here that the building does establish a new scale. It is within an area that's zoned R8A, C24 along Atlantic Avenue. The building height you're seeing is the maximum base height for the zoning district. As you can see, this is definitely very appropriate for this wide thoroughfare that is so close to transit. You can also see the planted median in the middle. Again, this is part of the Atlantic Avenue improvements. 50 Pennsylvania Avenue is another mixed-use project. That's also, this one is nearing completion. It's located on the western end of the planned area near Broadway Junction. In the upper left, you can see kind of the station itself, which is also located adjacent to several other items or several other investments, including Callahan Kelly Playground and a new building at 2440 Fulton Street, where HRA will be relocating their offices. The 50 Pennsylvania project is located at the corner of Fulton Street and Pennsylvania Avenue, one block from the closest train stop and about 1/3 of a mile from Broadway Junction. The Fulton Street is a commercial corridor that also has received public realm investments and small business support. And then Pennsylvania Avenue is one of the main north-south corridors in East New York. It runs from the Jackie Robinson Parkway down to the Belt Parkway. Just a couple blocks south of the project, you can also see the New York NYPD Community Center, and then actually on the same block as the project, a new Workforce One Center that was constructed as part of the rezoning is located. So you can see in the upper left that the site was previously a one-story strip mall. It's now nearly complete. The development company, Penrose Properties, along with Riseboro Community Services, which is a Bushwick-based social services organization. They're aiming to obtain their TCO by the end of the year. The project will have an 18,000 square foot fresh grocery store, along with commercial space that will include 2 spaces set aside for small businesses as part of HPD's retail preservation pilot program. We're also seeing new housing developments with market rate and permanently affordable MIH units throughout the rezoning area. As the commission will recall, the MIH option 1 was mapped here, requiring 25% of units in new buildings to be affordable at an average of 60% AMI. So the building on the left is along Atlantic Avenue, close to Pennsylvania Ave. It's in an R8A C24 district with an enhanced commercial district overlay. And in total, it will include 68 units, with 16 of those being MIH, along with ground floor retail. The other building on the right is 975 Liberty. This is in an R6A C24 area along the Liberty Avenue commercial corridor or mixed use corridor. It will include, it includes 41 units in total, with 13 of those being MIH, as well as some ground floor retail. And so what we've shown here is just some of the housing that's being created by developers and just some of the 100% affordable projects that are being facilitated by HPD subsidies, including we have a lot of more units on infill sites throughout Community District 5, and one with a portfolio of community land trust projects to be developed by Manny. We also, this is just the beginning, and so we do expect to see more development later on. And later in this review session, you'll actually be seeing one of the other HPD clusters of infill sites. Another key arm of the plan was to support economic development by providing resources and support for businesses, improving the public realm along business corridors, and also providing support to job seekers. And so one big accomplishment, or something that we're proud of with the rezoning is that a new Workforce One Center was created and this is something that came out of feedback that was heard from the community about desiring these kinds of services in a Workforce One Center closer to where they live. Since the rezoning, there have been over 7,000 people referred, or the Workforce One Center has connected 2,700 residents to jobs. There's also been programs that have to support local businesses, including the Commercial Lease Assistance Program and a business capacity growing course called Fast Track Growth Venture, along with the support from HPD through its retail preservation pilot program, which was employed at Chestnut Commons and the 50 Pennsylvania Avenue projects we saw earlier. And then in addition, there's also the local hiring outreach plan that HPD requires on projects receiving significant subsidies. So part of the improvements to commercial corridor, or part of the goals was to improve commercial corridors. SBS released a needs assessment in 2016 that was conducted in partnership with organizations such as including the Cypress Hills LDC, the LDC of East New York, and the Highland Park EDC. They looked at Fulton Street, Atlantic, Liberty, and Pitkin Avenue, and they came up with recommendations for a lot of streetscape improvements that include everything from like planters and signage to lighting, revitalizing tree pits, and new furniture such as garbage bins along Fulton Street and Liberty. And lastly, they've also had initiatives such as the Gates of Atlantic project, which happened earlier this summer, where artists were hired to paint murals on several storefront roll gates. There's also they're also working on new lighting along Fulham Street to help improve the streetscape there. Vincent Avenue is another street that is getting improvements. This is a really unique corridor or street that is within the IBZ. It runs alongside the L train, which is elevated, and it's a very narrow 20-foot wide street. There are very poor conditions right now, as you can see on the left, with a lot of broken sidewalks if they exist. And in general, it's just not very safe and definitely not accessible, physically accessible for people. So there are improvements that are focused on pedestrian safety and accessibility. Since again, this is along the L train, there's a stop in the IBZ. The construction is anticipated to start in summer of 2024 and then be completed in 2026. And some of the things that will be included will be new lighting, new sidewalks and ADA sidewalk ramps, along with wayfinding signage and pavement reconstruction. EDC also has been supporting businesses as well. They've been utilizing their expertise to provide marketing and business support to existing entities working within the East New York IBZ, particularly the LDC of East New York and East Brooklyn BID, which are headed by Bill Wilkins, who you can see at the left in the photo, who is a leader of these organizations, and he's been an important advocate for businesses in East New York. Some of the things they did was they created a new website for the East Brooklyn BID and new promotional materials. This branding supports community events like you see here, which is where they host students or bring students to meet businesses for National Manufacturers Day, as well as kind of more business and marketing events, such as events called Meet the Developer. They've also supported a digital marketing campaign to promote the IBZ as a place for businesses, and have provided branding within the actual IBZ itself, including new street banners and a wall mural to provide a strong unified branding and visual appeal to this industrial area. Lastly, they've also provided some other strategies to support businesses as well, and are currently including high-speed internet, where they're working on the final stages of selecting a provider from an RFP that was released earlier this year. EDC also led the the full interior and exterior renovation of a city-owned industrial building that's located in the IBZ off of Pitkin Avenue, about 1 block west of the L train. It's a 30,000 square foot building, and there were 2 existing MWBE tenants using the space, and they were able to continue operating throughout the renovation, which is expected to be complete this year. And EDC will be working with local organizations to help find 2 new tenants to for the 10,000 square foot spaces, or each for the 2 units they have at 10,000 square feet each. And now I'll turn over
So,
to
Broadway
Winston.
Junction. Okay. Thank you, Karina. Broadway Junction is the nexus of several neighborhoods: Bushwick, Bedford-Stuyvesant, Ocean Hill, Brownsville, in East New York, and Cypress Hills, as well as the East New York IBZ. It is also very transit rich with 6 bus lines, 5 subway lines, as well as a regional train line, the Long Island Railroad station at East New York, which is actually the raison d'etre that we used for the Sustainable Communities grant back in the Obama administration to receive the first planning grant for this area. Broadway Junction is an important area that we highlighted both from the community as well as elected officials as an area that could sustain growth for both housing as well as economic development space for jobs. So next slide, please. At the request of the borough president, Eric Adams, and the then council member, Espinal, the city started through the offices of the EDC a vision study with the community for the Broadway Junction area. This study kicked off in the winter of 2017 and was published in 2019 with a broad vision scope for what could be achieved at Broadway Junction. It recognized the fact that the area was rich in transit, rich in surrounding communities, but had great needs that it could satisfy at this location. And next one, please. In line with that commitment, the city identified office space that it could locate here in East New York, Broadway Junction. And as the commission will recall, the commission approved the city's acquisition of office space here at a building to be constructed at Fulton Street opposite the Broadway Junction subway station. This will result in the construction of a 400,000 square foot building with most of that space taken by HRA, some additional office space for private use, as well as significant ground floor retail that will enliven this area and provide a safer and better lit connection between here and the Long Island Railroad station. The next slide, please. And then finally, we were able to use the leverage of all of our work here, including the neighborhood plan, the rezoning, as well as the Sustainable Communities grant to, in the new infrastructure bill that was recently passed, for a $50 million grant from the Department of Transportation, Federal Department of Transportation, towards the cost of making the Broadway Junction station ADA accessible with elevators, which currently do not exist here, and revamped escalators and stairs. Next one.
Yeah, so in addition, so we've seen, we've seen the housing, some housing investments, investments in to support economic development, And then lastly, a big part of the plan was about improving or putting investments into community resources such as public spaces and making public realm improvements. And with that, I'll turn it over back to Winston to talk about some of those.
Right. So Atlantic Avenue is one of the other areas that we had concentrated on as part of the Sustainable Communities Grant, and then later as part of the neighborhood planning effort. And in fact, former council member Eric Dallon dedicated several $million of his own discretionary funding to DOT, and DOT used that leverage to then apply for federal grant for a reconstruction of Atlantic Avenue. Atlantic Avenue is, as you can see in this image, before the reconstruction, is really a 6-lane thoroughfare. It's a truck route that connects downtown Brooklyn with Queens, Jamaica, and Long Island, leads out to the airport and job centers. But it really formed a barrier between the neighborhoods here within East New York, between Cypress Hills and the core of East New York, and was also, because of the difficulty and the disrepair of the median, very dangerous for pedestrians as well as for vehicles, as well as not being very attractive. So DOT applied for funding together with dedicated funds from the Neighborhood Development Fund, totaled over $40 million to revamp this street into a boulevard. Next slide. So you can see that DOT built a brand new landscape median that rationalized and organized the vehicular traffic on Atlantic Avenue, as well as for allowing for pedestrian safety islands where pedestrians could cross safely between the two neighborhoods. The Neighborhood Development Fund itself contributed money towards bulb outs at these intersections and for additional street furniture at bus stops. Next slide. And here you can see some of these images of the what our vision was for the neighborhood plan, and then an example of one of the bus stops. I think this one particularly stood out to us as planners, the one in the upper right-hand corner, because it was next to the park, and as the park was under construction, there were no amenities, and we were out here surveying, and we saw people standing waiting for the bus, which is one of the major east-west bus routes here in this neighborhood. And you can also see the landscaping as well as the pedestrian safety islands that were installed by DOT here in the middle of Atlantic Avenue. The next slide. And something that was very significant, innovative in the city, I don't think it exists elsewhere in the city, was an NYPD operated community youth center. During the outreach process, we heard very clearly from residents that they wanted to have a place where youth could be active and safe after school hours. We identified a city-owned building, which was a former courthouse that had been converted to a gym and offices for the local community board, and which had been used as that, but had been vacated by those users, and the NYPD was using it for office space. NYPD, under the Deputy Commissioner Susan Herman and CPC Chair Carl Weisbrod, worked particularly hard here to identify and develop this innovative program where NYPD officers would run a youth program with gym equipment and other athletic equipment. The next slide. And what we were particularly impressed by was, first of all, the Neighborhood Development Fund provided significant funding, almost $10 million for the rehabilitation of this facility with the state-of-the-art equipment. And we really appreciated the energy and enthusiasm of the NYPD officers who were looking forward to working with youth at this facility and literally improve community and youth police relations by literally rubbing elbows with each other as they enter and exit the building, as they walk through the building and play and exercise in this building. Thank you.
The city also made almost $40 million in public space investments across other parks and playgrounds and schools from NDF funding, plus along with investments from NYCHA, the School Construction Authority, and from the Parks Department. On the left, you can see the Sparandeo Brothers Playground, which we've referred to previously. This playground received new basketball courts and new handball courts. And then on the right, you're seeing one of the playgrounds at Highland Park. The Highland Park is they're receiving 2 playground reconstructions. The one you're seeing is complete, and the other one just east of this one will be complete next summer. They're also included things like new playground equipment, new benches, as well as more new paths and sidewalks. City Line Park is an area that the city committed approximately about $5 million to improve a large underutilized asphalt area, which you can see on the left. The city saw this as an opportunity to really make this, take existing space that we had, make improvements so that it could be used by many different people for many different activities. So some of the new amenities that are included are a skate park, a basketball court, lighting was installed for the basketball court, along with a synthetic turf field, a track, and then fitness equipment and a picnic area. And most importantly, they also, when they were making these improvements, the city also lowered the fencing around the park to make it more inviting. The city held visioning sessions to determine the programming and park features here, and it has been successful. The park is very well used and is a great example of transforming existing assets that we have into spaces, like new places for people to enjoy. Callahan Kelly Playground is another public space that that's located near Broadway Junction. And this project is currently under construction with an expected completion date of 2023. The park exists right outside the Broadway Junction, the actual subway stop, and it included a lot of amenities previously, but they were generally just in very poor condition, old, like heavily used. And so as part of the plan, the park is being completely revamped, and the city was actually recognized that there was a street going through the middle of this that the city was able to close off and can now expand the space, make the park continuous, and also make the area safer. The reconstruction will include a playground, spray shower, basketball courts, a skate park, game tables, fitness equipment, and sitting areas. These new upgrades were intended to complement the new zoning that on the residential side streets and vice versa, and to help support the future development that we expect to see, given that this is near transit. Oops. So you can see the construction is underway with the plan up on the left, and in the bottom right, you can see on the north side that where the street used to go through between the two portions of Callahan Valley Playground. And one of the big, big accomplishments of this proposal or of the plan was also a new 1,000 seat school that houses both elementary school and a middle school. Both of these schools have a STEM focused curriculum and are both open currently. You can see some of the interior spaces on the left and the building on the right, which does meet the School Construction Authority's green building guideline. The agency, the city is proud of the tremendous progress and investments that have been made over the last 5 years from the public sector, from community partners, and from private entities. We're seeing these investments start to spur new investments, such as with the federal grant received for the Broadway Junction accessibility improvements. And we look forward to seeing continued investments in East New York and Cypress Hills and Ocean Hill, especially for opportunities for good quality jobs, education, and services for residents of these neighborhoods. Since one of these plans, or one of the goals of the plan, was to create affordable housing to help have a vision for this neighborhood to grow sustainably and to create more livable communities. It's only been 5 years, but as we have more years of data to look at, we can dive deeper into measuring and analyzing change within these communities. We also want to continue to engage with the community and learn what has worked, what hasn't, and what's still needed, and then continue to envision what they want their neighborhoods to be like, and to thrive, and to plan for that. And with that, we'll now take any questions.
Thank you very much, Karina and Winston, for that presentation. And I will take questions from the commission. Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Winston and Karina, for that very informative presentation. What is the approximate amount of city capital that's gone into East New York over the last 5 years? I know there's obviously been a lot of private capital and some federal money, but what has been the city's portion of that approximately?
Well, Karina, I mean, at the beginning, the total price tag, if you will, the total commitment was over $250 million, in the order of like $260 million. Some of that included federal money, such as for Atlantic Avenue, but the bulk of it, the school, the NDF improvements in the parks and along with transportation came from the city. So, and most of those have been implemented now.
Thank you. I just want to make the observation, Broadway Junction, in a different public forum, I have advocated very strongly over the number of years for more investment, public resources to go toward the Broadway Junction. I think several 100,000 people per day, I believe the number is, pass through Broadway Junction. And heretofore it has not been a very welcoming transit hub. So obviously the lead that you've taken and the Brooklyn office has taken is a welcome one. And I would hope that the state, especially with new leadership at ESD, will build on what's been started out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
We agree.
Commissioner Levin.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. It's good to get another look further down the road at how these plans are evolving. Following up on the question that Commissioner Knuckles asked about the amount of city investment, does that include HPD investment in the housing that you described?
Actually, I don't believe it did. I believe the $260 million figure was actually just capital
Right.
infrastructure.
So in fact,
commitment,
it would be
you're
interesting to
well
know.
point out the fact.
It'd be
Yeah.
interesting to know what HPD and other housing funding sources have committed to the area, because that's also a really important part of the public investment. And so during the presentation, the question that burbled up in my mind is, how we can measure how the neighborhood may have changed. 5 years is not a long time in zoning terms, and so maybe it's too early to ask. But Karina, when you mentioned the area median income of $44,000 a year, I wondered what the area median income was when we started this project, how the neighborhood is changing. There was great fear of displacement. How do we know how we're doing on that front? Have income levels risen? Have rents risen? Is the neighborhood, sounds like the neighborhood is being strengthened with all of these investments. How is it affecting the folks who were living there when the rezoning happened?
Well, I think as Karina pointed out, is that we don't yet have all the numbers. We have the census figures for now in terms of racial composition. What we've seen here in East New York, what the census shows is a modest decrease in the Hispanic population and the Black population, but also an increase, an increase in the Hispanic population, a small increase in the white population, a small decrease in the Black population, but a very significant increase in the Asian population. I think overall here the population is increasing in the community district, and that's in accordance with the rest of Brooklyn and the city that we've seen. We have as yet, most of the housing, if not all of the housing, most of the housing here, much of the bulk of the housing has been targeted towards low income and all affordable. There have been some mixed income developments, and we presume that those will likely cater a market to Section 8 voucher recipients, so that we believe that for the time being, or what we see is East New York remaining as a working class community. There were some reports early on of speculation, but those reports included data from sales that were actually outside of the rezoning area, were not for residential property, actually for commercial property. And with the help of the tenant support unit, there are boots on the ground helping helping tenants to remain in their buildings and keeping a careful watch over the tenants living in East New York.
Thank you.
And I'll just say before I go on calling, is that there were fears of gentrification when we did this rezoning, but the data that we looked at showed this neighborhood with less risk of it than many other neighborhoods in Brooklyn and throughout the city. And I think our experience to date bears out that continues to be the case. And that could be unique characteristics of this neighborhood. It certainly doesn't mean it's not a thing we need to be worried about, but thus far we have not seen the actions that we took to really greatly spur or increase any of those sort of dynamics. So we're happy about that. Commissioner Ortiz.
Hi, thank you. It is great to get information and follow up. So I appreciate this. And there's been a tremendous amount of, tremendous number of positive outcomes. I do have a question, about Chestnut Commons. You mentioned early on that There's going to be local retail on Chestnut Street. And, I recall when this came before us, I raised some concerns about, Liberty Avenue. We have C24 overlays on Fulton, Atlantic, Liberty, Hitkin, in a low income neighborhood, a low to moderate income neighborhood. And the CDNA that you referenced even spoke to, almost a 20% vacancy rate on Liberty Avenue. And this is all pre-COVID, 11% vacancy rate along Fulton. So I just wondered, as we see new development, and this is not in the commercial overlay zone, as we see new development, what is the department's position on, supporting existing corridors versus, allowing further dispersion of retail throughout the neighborhood? Because I would say that, as a department, we should be careful with this, particularly as we see, retail contracting.
Thank you for that question, Commissioner Ortiz. I do want to, I definitely hear your concern. I do want to note that the community board has heard a lot from, there are a lot of local businesses that want space. And the community board has discussed, with the developers that come before them that, a big issue is that just the space that is available is too expensive for them to rent. So there's a hope that with Chestnut Commons will be including the retail preservation, this pilot for below market rent for some commercial tenants. So that's a possibility that could help support them.
I think as a city policy, we have to think about, and there's subsidy going to new space. New build space is often more expensive, than older space. I just would hope that, as you look at new projects, that you really try to be mindful about creating more and more retail space that in this neighborhood is going to result in an oversupply. The vacancy is already suggesting there's an oversupply, and we're just creating a more of it. So I just a word of caution as you look at new projects and approve new developments.
I mean, I should note that it is non-residential, the space on the ground floor, and as you'll recall, we just certified a rezoning for the Cypress Hills LBC on Fulton Street nearby, where the ground floor will be occupied by a daycare center. Right, it does not necessarily have to be a retail. I think what we're looking for is activation. The ground floor and the Chestnut Commons, that will come in the way of simply non-residential space. That could be retail, but it is more likely, I think, there's a significant educational component and job training component as part of that project.
Thank you. It was described as neighborhood retail though in the presentation, but thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions? Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. Back on slide 9, you had mentioned as part of the basement pilot program, there were 9 units, I guess, waiting for permits. Do you know how many units were actually, how many units were allowed to participate in that program? And do you foresee more, I guess, applications being filed with the Department of Buildings to take advantage of that basement pilot program?
I mean, I don't have those numbers right now. We can provide them to you. But as far as I know, the pilot itself is not open to any new applicants. And so unless there's changes in the pilot, yeah, there's no new opportunities for people to join.
Fine, thank you. And one last question. There was, I believe you said it was one fresh food supermarket that's not open yet. They're waiting for the TCO for the building. Has there been any other, I guess, any more people taking advantage of the program, the fresh food program?
Not any new ones aside from the Western Beef.
No, not in East New York.
Okay.
And in part because the zoning hadn't been in place, but now that the zoning's in place, we do as with the 50 Penn project. We see that.
Thank you.
And I would add, Commissioner Ramprashad, on your first question, that is a small number of units in the basement apartment, trial, but that effort really showed us how challenging it is to achieve this end. And there is currently a new citywide process to think critically about how we can enhance that program and make it easier for units to be able to convert. Some of the rules about ceiling height and other things made for really costly renovations that were just not feasible for many of these homeowners, even with city assistance. So there's a relook going on to try to sort of liberalize where we can, and not of course on life safety issues, but on other things, liberalize how we do it to see if there's a way to bring many more units into this program. So you can expect to hear more about that as we move into next year. And some of this was, of course, spurred by Ida and what happened there. And we know there's just a real need to address this issue.
Yep.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you all for that presentation.
So moving on to our first item on our agenda, it's a certification of a zoning map and zoning text amendments, UDAP designation and project approval, amendment to an urban renewal plan, and disposition of city-owned property in Queens Community District 14. Our presenter is Hala Saleh.
Hi, good afternoon, commissioners. I'll be presenting on the Resilient Edgemere Community Plan. Next slide. This is an HPD-sponsored project within the Edgemere Urban Renewal Area in Queens Community District 14. The requested actions are for a zoning map amendment, text amendment, urban renewal plan amendment, UDAP, and disposition of city-owned property. Next slide. The Edgemere neighborhood and urban renewal area is located on the eastern portion of the Rockaway Peninsula and bounded by Beach 35th Street to the east, Beach 50th and 51st Street to the west, Jamaica Bay to the north, and Rockaway Freeway to the south. The Edgemere neighborhood is a low-lying waterfront community that was originally developed as a vacation destination for New Yorkers through the 1930s. However, with the expanded highway system in the mid-20th century, vacationers shifted to other destinations, and at this time, the city began clearing the established bungalow communities. Next slide. Between the 1960s and 1990s, the city acquired over 150 lots through in-rem foreclosure. The Edgemere Urban Renewal Area was designated in 1997 with the goal to encourage the development of housing and community amenities. The Urban Renewal Plan also created a framework for the investment of $100 million in sewer and street improvements to support the construction of 800 middle-income homes and up to 100,000 square feet of commercial space. Following the designation of the Urban Renewal Plan, 213 one- and two-family homes were constructed for a total of 307 units. In 2008, the Urban Renewal Plan was amended to change the definition of the residential and commercial land uses, as well as to exempt some sites from height restrictions for new residential buildings. However, following the 2008 financial crisis and Hurricane Sandy in 2012, much of the city-owned property remains vacant and unimproved. Next slide. The Resilient Edgemere Community Planning Initiative began in 2015 to align with the city's Sandy recovery and assess in the area's vacant land for long-term comprehensive community planning. HPD led an 18-month community-based and interagency planning initiative, engaging over 400 residents. The plan was released in 2017, which included a conceptual planning framework and land use plan. The plan established 4 main goals, including protecting the neighborhood from flooding, create resilient housing and maintain the community's low density feel, improve streets and transit, and increase neighborhood amenities. Next slide. The plan proposed a long-term vision for the community to peel back development from the vulnerable edge and concentrate new development towards transit resources along Rockaway Beach Boulevard. The land use strategy aimed to provide a managed growth strategy to address the existing flood risk, while also facilitating the development of vacant land to create affordable housing, commercial, and community facility spaces. Next slide. The Edgemere Urban Renewal Area is outlined in orange and is just north of the Auburn Urban Renewal Area. Other notable developments in the surrounding area are the Beach Green Dunes developments and Edgemere Commons, which all provide 100% affordable housing. Next slide. The project area has a total area of approximately 166 acres and comprises predominantly of vacant and unimproved city-owned land. The Resilient Edgemere project area is divided into 4 sub-areas: the hazard mitigation area, shown in red, the limited development area in yellow, the neighborhood infill area in blue, and the commercial corridor in green. These sub-areas are determined by the land use strategy of the Resilient Framework Community Plan, with the hazard mitigation area being the most restrictive and new multifamily mixed-use development concentrated along the elevated A line in the commercial corridor. Next slide. The project area is mapped with several zoning districts, including R4, R41, C3, C438, C81, and commercial overlays. There are several vacant lots throughout the neighborhood, as reflected by the gray on the map. Residential uses in the area are primarily 1 and 2 family residences. However, there are some larger multifamily residential buildings, including the Beach 41st Street NYCHA campus and the Ocean Bay apartments in the surrounding area. Existing commercial and community facility uses are mostly located along Beach Channel Drive, which is a major east and west corridor of the peninsula. Next slide. Here are some images of the existing condition of the neighborhood. The image on the left shows the view of Beach 44th Street and Conch Road within the hazard mitigation area. As you can see, there are overgrown nature and the unimproved streets nearest to the waterfront. The image on the right is within the proposed limited development area, where the prevailing form are detached elevated residences. Next slide. These are photos of the existing commercial development along Beach Channel Drive within the neighborhood infill area, which would be rezoned to a C24 commercial overlay to allow for additional commercial uses. Next slide. These photos are showing the existing mid-rise multifamily development within the proposed commercial corridor. The image on the right shows HPD's Beach Green Dunes developments and the proximity to the elevated A train. Next slide. Edgemere's geography as we know it today was formed by the dredging and filling in of the Wavecrest Inlet and the northernmost portions of the neighborhood into Jamaica Bay. Engineering the landscape in this way transformed naturally occurring marshes, wetlands, and waterways into developable land. Next slide. The Edgemere neighborhood faces significant flood risk and coastal hazards. The area is located within the high-risk floodplain with base flood elevations ranging from 9 hazards. Of the neighborhood is also located within the coastal A subzone, where wave action during a coastal storm event could result in additional damage to property. Next slide. High tide projections for the 2050s show the area will experience twice daily flooding in the next 30 years. The lightest shade of pink represents the most conservative projection we have for sea level rise for the 2050s, which is about 30 inches. However, as shown on the map, the severity of the flooding varies throughout the neighborhood, with the northern peninsula experiencing the most vulnerability and less flooding further inland. This condition also only shows the projections of the area absent any intervention or investment. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers have planned projects in the area which would reduce flood risk during a storm event and tidal inundation over the next 50 years. Next slide. Understanding the varying flood risk profile of the area, the proposed project uses land use strategy of the Resilient Edgemere Plan to place various treatments and actions to be responsive to the existing risk and facilitate development where appropriate. Next slide. The hazard mitigation is located directly along Jamaica Bay waterfront. The area is the lowest lying area of the project and is most vulnerable to flooding and coastal hazards. The hazard mitigation area is roughly defined by the coastal A subzone, which provides risk of wave damage during a coastal storm event. The area is currently categorized as low density 1 and 2 family residences in detached and semi-detached buildings and vacant land. The plan would limit all city-owned property to open space, and any new residential development would be limited to single-family detached buildings. Next slide. The limited development area is inland of the hazard mitigation area and generally bounded by Norton Avenue to the north, Beach 49th Street to the west, Beach Channel Drive to the south, and the NYCHA campus to the east. This area is outside of the coastal A subzone, but is also low-lying and may experience ponding from tidal flooding. This area is currently developed with 1 to 4 family residences in detached and semi-detached buildings, as well as vacant land. The plan would limit any new development to 1 and 2 family detached residences. However, for lots less than 25 feet in width, development would be limited to a single family detached buildings. Next slide. The neighborhood infill area is generally in the center of the project area and less exposed to coastal hazards. This area is currently developed with 1 to 4 family residences in semi-detached and attached buildings, as well as low-rise commercial buildings and vacant land. For this portion of the project area, it would remain at current densities and land uses to develop the city-owned land in line with the existing context. Next slide. The residential development within the hazard mitigation area, the limited development area, and the neighborhood infill area are envisioned to provide affordable home ownership opportunities for the community and would be owned and managed by a community land trust or CLT. The CLT would be a non-for-profit organization which owns and stewards land in perpetuity for the public's benefit. CLTs separate the ownership of their land from the ownership of the structures on the land, typically by entering into long-term ground leases with homeowners. HPD is in the process of completing a competitive process to select the partner for the CLT. Next slide. The commercial corridor is the furthest inland, located along Rockaway Beach Boulevard and Beach 50th Street, nearest the elevated A subway line. The area today consists of 1 to 4 family residences in semi-detached and detached buildings, low-rise commercial buildings, and recently constructed mid-rise mixed-use buildings. This area is proposed to facilitate development of vacant city-owned land for affordable housing, commercial, and community facility space in mid-rise mixed-use buildings. Next slide. Within the commercial corridor are 5 sites that are city-owned and would enter into an RFP process following ULURP to develop 4 multifamily mixed-use buildings. While these buildings have not been designed, the draft EIS identified the development potential could result in a total of 530 units and approximately 54,665 square feet of commercial space and 266 parking spaces. Next slide. In order to facilitate the proposed treatments of each of the sub areas, a set of land use actions are proposed, including several zoning map amendments, zoning text amendment to establish an MIH area and special coastal risk district, several amendments to the urban renewal plan, UDAP designation, and disposition of real city-owned property. Next slide. The proposed zoning map amendment within the hazard mitigation area would change the existing R4 and R41 districts to an R3A for 207 lots. The R3A zoning district would permit 1 and 2 family detached residential buildings and reduce the allowable density by prohibiting multifamily homes, which are currently permitted in R4. The zoning map amendment would also rezone the C3 to a C3A along the Jamaica Bay waterfront to permit waterfront recreational activities while also restricting multifamily development. Next slide. Within the limited development area, the existing R4 would be rezoned to R41 for 236 lots. The proposed zoning change would restrict new development to 1 and 2 family detached and semi-detached dwellings and prohibit multifamily residences. Next slide. Zoning changes within the neighborhood infill area are limited to commercial overlays. 8 parcels located along Beach Channel Drive, bounded by Beach 43rd Street and 44th Street, would be rezoned from a C12 to a C24, with no change in the underlying R4 zoning district. As compared to the C12, C24 has a lower off-street parking requirement and allows for additional commercial uses. 25 lots located further east along Beach Channel Drive between Beach 37th Street and Beach 40th Street would remove the existing C12 and C22 overlays to better reflect the existing land uses. Next slide. The R6A C24 is proposed within the commercial corridor to facilitate the development of multifamily mixed-use buildings. The R6A district would allow for residential buildings with a maximum FAR of 3.6, and the C24 commercial overlay would permit local retail and commercial services such as a grocery store, restaurants, and beauty parlors to serve the area's residential population. The applicant believes that the proposed zoning district is appropriate in this area due to its distance from the bayside and proximity to the elevated A train. Next slide. A special coastal risk district is proposed to be mapped over the hazard mitigation area and limited development area to further restrict the development beyond the underlying zoning districts. The Special Coastal Risk District was created in 2017 to address coastal areas that are currently at exceptional risk from flooding and may face greater risk in the future. The Special District places limits on new development in these highly vulnerable areas. There are currently 4 other Special Coastal Risk Districts mapped throughout the city, including in Hamilton Beach and Broad Channel, and most recently in Garrettson Beach. Next slide. The zoning text amendment would establish the 5th Special Coastal Risk District within the city to modify the land use regulations within the proposed boundary. For R3A and C3A zoning districts within the special district, residential development would be limited to single-family detached buildings. For R41 zoning districts within the Special Coastal Risk District, residential development on lots greater than 25 feet would be limited to 1 and 2 family detached buildings, while lots that are less than 25 feet would be limited to single family detached buildings. The Special Coastal Risk District would also prohibit community facilities with overnight sleeping accommodations to further limit future exposure to flooding and coastal risks for temporary or semi-permanent populations. Next slide. A zoning text amendment to establish 2 MIH areas are proposed. One area generally bounded are street between Rockaway Beach Boulevard and Beach Channel Drive. And the other area is bounded by Beach 43rd Street and Beach 38th Street between Rockaway Beach Boulevard and Rockaway Freeway. Both areas are proposed to be mapped with option 1 and option 2. Next slide. There are a number of amendments associated with the urban renewal plan and urban renewal area. All sites within the urban renewal area would be acquired, as well as new acquisition for the expanded geography. The urban renewal area boundary would change by the addition of 13 lots and the removal of 9 lots. The duration of the urban renewal plan would be extended for a period of 40 years from the date of this second amendment. Next slide. Land use designations throughout the urban renewal plan would also be amended. 10 sites would be changed to open space from residential, and 1 site would be added to open space, which is shown here in green. 4 sites would be changed to commercial/residential from residential, which is shown in orange, and 2 sites would be changed to residential from commercial residential, which is shown in yellow. Additionally, the definition of open space would be amended to include agricultural uses when permitted by zoning. Lastly, 2 amendments to the supplementary controls of redevelopment would be included, which would change the density controls to permit up to 1,500 units instead of 800, and the removal of the height restrictions for perimeter walls exceeding 25 feet. Next slide. A UDAA and UDAP designation is proposed for 5 sites over 42 lots and 2 demapped roadways. Land uses would consist of residential, commercial space, and community facility space. Lastly, a disposition of all properties within the urban renewal area is proposed to be disposed to a sponsor determined by HPD. Next slide. A notice of completion of a draft environmental impact statement was issued on December 10th, 2021. The DEIS identified several adverse impacts in respect to community facilities for early childhood, open space for active recreation, transportation for traffic, transit, and safety, construction, noise, and air quality. No other adverse impacts were identified. Next slide. In summary, the proposed actions would realize the land use strategy from the Resilient Edgemere Community Plan by establishing 4 sub-areas to limit development and density along the vulnerable water's edge and concentrate development inland near transit resources. This concludes my presentation, and I can now take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Hala, for that very thorough and complete presentation. Are there any questions from the commission? Commissioner Burney.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Yeah, and thank you. It's clearly, a very thoughtful and thorough analysis. And I'm happy to hear also that, there's a fair amount of community engagement. But, I'm constantly reminded whenever we talk about these things at the Edgemere Peninsula, that really this entire neighborhood is a special coastal risk district. When you look at the consequences of sea level rise, and it's not just about the lots within the neighborhood you're talking about, the entire peninsula becomes disconnected and isolated. The A-train service stops as it comes across Jamaica Bay, the roads are flooded, the area is completely isolated. And what we will be faced with by 2050 is a complicated and expensive relocation to rescue these people who are going to be stranded. And we're not thinking about that. We keep talking about development in an area that's really not suitable for development. So I understand the the short-term need to support that community. And I understand that they need better facilities and they need better retail and they need more short-term investment, but we have to have a plan for what is really going to happen in 2050, because it's not that far away. And we seem to have our head in the sand about that. So that's my concern.
Thank you. Commissioner Ortiz?
Yes, I guess following on, more specifically with respect to the special coastal risk district, I know that was passed in 2017, that tool. We're now many years later, we know a lot more about, sea level rise and climate change, and I think are even more concerned now than we were then. Are there tools, or is the department thinking about tools that would create effectively moratoriums on development? Because now we're limiting development, but people can still build homes and they're still putting themselves at risk. So could you sort of speak to that issue?
Sure. So for this, go ahead, Anita.
I was just going to say that, that really is a city policy issue. We are very well aware of, the risk here on this peninsula and in other places in the city. We saw post-Sandy, the city grapple with this in terms of what areas of the city should we say we are just precluding any new development in, and where will we try to limit development. And the city has not yet gotten to a place where it is willing in a large way to declare neighborhoods, precluded from developing home. Really, it's a property rights issue and certainly would be a taking, and it would be costly. But, this is discussed quite frequently in the city. And we know that as we go forward, we will need to take these actions in certain neighborhoods. There does have to be political will for that. And it is really not, this is an issue that is much broader than city planning's, role can affect it. So we hear you, we share those concerns, but we're doing what we can within the constraints that we exist today.
Not to suggest that this is not a big.
Do you want to add something?
Yes. Oops, sorry. Yeah, I was just going to add too for this particular project, within the hazard mitigation area, which is the most vulnerable aspect of this community, all of the lots that are city owned are going to be open space in perpetuity. So there wouldn't be any additional development on those sites. And the draft EIS didn't project any development sites within that zone. So by limiting the allowable residential to detached, that also provides a building typology that makes it easier to make any sort of retrofitting or flood resistant improvements that would be necessary in that area as well.
Commissioner Marin.
Thank you, Chair. Along the lines of Commissioner Bernie's inquiry, or Commissioner Ortiz's, and of course the Chair, I'm hearing that we're not going to be building on city-owned land. We're going to leave that for open space, but that we still have a huge constituency that has private homes that live there. And taking a look at the map that you showed us, one of the peninsulas was a park, right? Is there any way or any consideration being provided to raising either the bulkhead wall or some land around there, as we're doing at the FDR Park, to be able to mitigate the water coming into that community? Because it is a large amount of water that's going to be coming in. And we're talking about development there, as well as preventing some development, as well as existing homeowners that live there. And in none of these conversations have I heard any considerations for some sort of protective wall or raising of the park.
Sure. So the U.S. Army Corps is actually implementing quite a few coastal protection projects across Edgemere through their Rockaway Back Bay project. So this would include a combination of both hard and green infrastructure that's designed to protect against any sort of nuanced flooding or small coastal storms, which also factor in any sea level projections for the next 50 years. So the project components for the Edgemere one would include primarily berms or like rock sill structures, marsh restoration, and flood walls. So that's the primary construction project that is coming up through the U.S. Army Corps. They also have a project that's under construction right now on the ocean side, on the Atlantic Ocean as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hala.
Any additional questions? Oh, Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes, thank you, Hala. Thank you for the presentation. I share the same concerns that Commissioner Bernie, Marin, and Ortiz had raised. I had a question. Within the hazard mitigation area, has DEP installed storm sewers within those streets? Because I'm thinking down the line, when they do some development, the stormwater's got to go somewhere. And because you're in a flood zone, you can't put dry wells. You probably can use a gravel bed, but typically they would try to dump it into the storm sewer. So I'm just curious, has DEP already installed storm sewers within that area?
Sure. So while this framework was getting worked out, HPD also worked with DEP on a drainage study, and I'll let them kind of speak to that more when it comes back for the hearing. But there were a few sites that were identified as potential either pump stations or future infrastructure that could be used by DEP for the neighborhood as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. I am sure that we will be discussing these issues as we go forward. Thank you, Hala. Unless there are any other questions from the commission, I don't see any, then this item is certified. Thank you.
Thank you.
The second item on our agenda is a certification of a UDAP designation and disposition of city-owned property in Brooklyn Community District 1. Our presenter is David Weisglass.
Good afternoon, commissioners. This is an application for an urban development action area project for the designation, project approval, and disposition of city-owned property to facilitate the development of a new 9-story, 23,000 square foot residential building with 29 affordable dwelling units. Next slide, please. The applicant for this UDAP is the Department of Housing Preservation and Development. The project is located at 29 to 31 Bartlett Street in the Bedford neighborhood of Community District 1 in Brooklyn. As stated, HPD is requesting a UDAP designation for the disposition of city-owned property at this location. Next slide, please. Here we can see the location of the project site in the Bedford neighborhood of Community District 1 in Brooklyn. Next slide, please. The project site, outlined here in yellow, is located on the north side of Bartlett Street between Harrison and Throop Avenues. The site is located within walking distance of the G subway line as well as the J and M subway lines, which are elevated above Broadway. Local bus service includes the B57 bus that runs between Maspeth Fresh Pond and Red Hook, and the B43 bus that's directly outside of this map view that runs between Greenpoint and Lefferts Gardens. Directly across the street is Bartlett Playground. Broadway is 80 feet wide and commercial in nature, with many lots on the west side zoned with a commercial overlay. To the west of the project area, across Harrison Avenue, is the area of the Pfizer site's rezoning, which was approved by the City Planning Commission in 2017. Next slide, please. The larger Broadway Triangle Urban Renewal Plan, or URP, was first adopted in 1989. In 2009, the City Planning Commission voted to approve an amendment to the Broadway Triangle URP that changed the permitted land uses of certain designated sites within the district. The CPC later approved a zoning map amendment and zoning text amendment on the project areas, as well as surrounding manufacturing districts. The boundaries of this map amendment are shown here in red. The commission then approved the UDAB designation of a number of sites within this area to create approximately 488 units of affordable housing, as well as ground floor community facility and retail uses. The project before you, however, was not part of this group of properties that previously received UDAP and disposition approvals because the project site previously included an existing building that was contemplated for affordable housing through a rehabilitation program. However, it became structurally unsound and was demolished in 2018. As such, the project is before you today for its own UDAP disposition. The project site is mapped with voluntary inclusionary housing per the previously approved zoning text amendment on this URP site. Next slide, please. The project area and surrounding land uses and commercial overlays are shown here. Zoning districts to the north include R6A and R7A, which are predominantly medium density residential districts. C43, a medium density commercial district, is mapped to the east surrounding the intersection of Broadway and Flushing Avenue. Two low density industrial districts, M31 and M13, are mapped to the west and south of the project area. The western portion of the project site falls within a C24 commercial overlay. C23 overlaid zoning districts are also found near the site. The project area is within an R7A zoning district. R7A districts allow a maximum residential FAR of 4.6 for buildings with inclusionary housing, and new buildings must comply with quality housing height and setback regulations. When in an inclusionary housing area, the maximum base height is 75 feet and the maximum building height is 95 feet. Next slide, please. This slide shows the project area, which is currently vacant and has 50 feet of lot frontage. To the east of the project site is a 3-story commercial and office building, and to the west is a 7-story condo building developed in 2018. Next slide. This image shows Bartlett Street from the intersection with Harrison Avenue, facing east. On the left is the 7-story condo building noted in the previous slide. Next slide, please. This is an image of the south side of Bartlett Street, across the street from the project site, looking west toward Harrison Avenue. Directly across the street from the project site are a 10-unit condo building constructed in 2014, 2 vacant lots, and an auto repair shop. Next slide, please. This is an image of the south side of Bartlett Street facing west, showing Bartlett Playground, which is currently undergoing reconstruction. Next slide, please. The proposed development is a 9-story, 22,623 square foot residential building containing 29 affordable dwelling units with a mix of unit sizes and types. Approximately 6 units, or 20% of the total number, will be permanently affordable, reserved for households earning a mix of incomes through the voluntary inclusionary housing program. Additionally, a portion of the units will be reserved for formerly homeless individuals. As noted, this building is only one in the full Broadway Triangle redevelopment area, which is to include 390 units of housing in addition to a community center, workforce development center, and coffee shop. Next slide, please. The building would be set back approximately 3 feet 4 inches from the street line to allow for an access ramp and a landscaping planter. The building's facade would rise to a base height of 69 feet before setting back nearly 19 feet, and then rising to a maximum height of 89 feet. There would be a rear yard of 34.5 feet. The building will include a bicycle storage room, a lounge, and community room on the ground floor, and a laundry room will be on the 8th floor. No off-street parking will be provided, as no parking is required for income-restricted units in a transit zone. Next slide, please. This concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, David. Are there any questions from the commission? Commissioner Levin.
Yes, thank you, David. Did slide 7 show that there are lot line windows in the buildings on either side of this development site? Well, never mind the slide. Are there lot line windows?
We need to check that out again. I could look at slide 7 and get some more details on that.
Okay, or when it comes back for hearing, perhaps
can
we
see
can
here.
get filled in on. There we go.
Yeah, I can get to, I'd be happy to get some more details from HPD if they have any plans to accommodate that or spoken with this property owners.
Yeah, or
about it.
what's going on, what the legal status of those windows is. Thank you.
Surely.
Any other questions from the commission? If not, thank you, David, very much. Then this item is certified.
The third item on our agenda is a certification of a UDAP designation and disposition of city-owned property in Brooklyn Community District 5. Our presenter is Alexandra Patty Diaz.
Good afternoon, commissioners. In order to facilitate the development of affordable housing units in 4 vacant city-owned properties in Brooklyn, next, the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development proposes an Urban Development Action Area designation, Urban Development Action Area project approval, and disposition of city-owned property of 4 sites that we're calling the cluster. 2 of these sites are located within the East New York rezoning area, which was approved by the Commission in 2016. Next. The cluster, it's on the central area of East New York Community District 5 in Brooklyn. Next. And it is composed of 4 project areas. Project Area 1 is located on 492-496 Glenmore Avenue. Project Area 2, sorry, that was 1. Project Area 2 is located at 2358-2362 Pitkin Avenue. Project Area 3 is located at 581 and 9043 Dumont Avenue, and Project Area 4 is located at 743 Blake Avenue. And now I'm going to walk you through each of the project area with their development site and the proposed development. Next. So Project Area 1 is located on 496 Glenmore Avenue between Bradford Street to the west and Miller Avenue to the east, and it is located within an R5B zoning district, and the land uses on the surrounding include a mix of residential with industrial, retail, and institutional facilities. This area is also well served by public transportation. The Van Sinkling Avenue C subway station is located 1 block south, and the Van Sinkling Avenue J subway station is located 3 blocks north of this site. This area is also served by the Q24, B20, B83, and B14 buses. Next. This site is a vacant lot with approximately 5,000 square feet with 50 feet of street frontage on Glenmore Avenue. Next. And it will be improved with a 3-story walk-up building with approximately 6 units and approximately 61 square feet of floor area. This building is set back approximately 5 feet from the street front lawn line to match the street wall of the adjacent building, but also to provide the recess and landscape that helps the privacy of the ground floor units. Amenities of the building also include laundry facility, storage, bicycle parking, a rear yard that is landscape and access through the side yard for recreational use. All of these amenities will be accessible to all tenants of the building. Off-street parking is not required and none will be provided. Next. Project Area 2 is located at 2358-2362 Pitkin Avenue between Warwick and Ashford Street. Next, within an R7A C24 zoning district. The land uses in this area are majority residential with some retail and institutional facilities and industrial on the ground floor. This area is also accessible through public transit. The Shepherd Avenue C subway station is located 5 blocks east of Pitkin Avenue, and the J subway station is located 4 blocks of the site. In addition, the B1 and the Q24 buses serve the area. Next. So this site is a vacant city-owned lot property with approximately 54,000 square feet of lot area and 60 feet of frontage along Pitkin. And next, so this site will be developed with an 8-story building with approximately 26 units for a total floor area of 23,600 square feet, of which 21,800 will be for the residential uses and approximately 1,700 of commercial floor area will be located on the ground floor. This building will build up to the street line to match the adjacent buildings to the west and to facilitate an engaging pedestrian experience. The amenities of this building include a recreational room on the ground floor, a rear yard that will be landscaped and access to all tenants of the buildings, along with the terrace, where on the upper floor is also located the laundry room. There will also 13 bicycle parking spaces, and all this will be accessible and used by all residents of the building. No off-street parking is required, and none will be provided. Next, the project area 3 is located at 943 Dumont. And next, it is a corner lot on the northwest side of the intersection of Dumont Avenue and Ashford Street within an R5 zoning district. The majority of the area is used with residential, with some retail uses and institutionals in the ground floors of the avenues. Next, this area is well served by public transportation. As you were seeing in the previous map, the New Lots Avenue 3 subway station is located 1 block south of the development site. And this area is also served by the B14 and the B15 buses. And this lot is approximately 5,400 square feet with approximately 60 feet of frontage of Dumont Avenue. And next, the site will be developed as a 3-story walk-up building with approximately 6 affordable units for a total floor area of approximately 6,700 square feet. This proposed development will be facilitated by a major zoning override that is requested to waive the CR 2345, which relates to the minimum required front yards. This will allow the street wall of the proposed building to be built up to the lot line along Dumont Avenue, as opposed with setting back 10 feet from the lot line as the zoning district mandates. This request of override will allow the proposed building to accommodate legal windows for light and air along the side wall parallel to Dumont Avenue and to facilitate a maximum available area to create a quality livable space. In addition, the building will also set back 10 feet from Ashford Street to match the adjacent building, which will accommodate landscape along Ashford Street and to serve as a buffer between the street and the residential units located on the ground floor. Amenities also include a landscape side yard accessible to the building, residents, and washers and dryers also for their use. Off-street parking is not required and none will be provided. Next, project area 4 is located at 743 Blake Avenue. Next, and it is a corner lot located on the northwest side of the intersection between Blake Avenue and Bradford Street within an R6 zoning district. Land uses within the surrounding area include residential, open spaces, and public facilities and institutional uses. This is well served by public transportation. The Van Sinkling Avenue C subway station is located on Pitkin Avenue, 3 blocks north of the development site, and Van Sinkling Avenue subway station is located on Livonia Avenue, 2 blocks south of the development site. The local buses that serve the area are B20 and B83. Next, this site has a lot area of approximately 4,000 square feet and with approximately 100 feet of frontage along Blake Avenue. Next, it will be developed with a 4-story walk-up building with approximately 8 affordable units, reaching a total floor area of 86,000 square feet. The building will be set back 10 feet from the street lawn line along Bradford Street to match the street wall of the adjacent building to the north and to build up the street lawn line along Blake Avenue. It would also include landscape side yards, laundry accessible to all tenants of the building, and none off-street parking is required and none will be provided. Next. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Alexandria. Does anyone else on the commission have any questions for Alexandra? Commissioner Burney.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Alexandra. Good to see you again. Just a couple of questions. I'm assuming this is in the HPD home ownership program. Is that how?
Yes.
And do we know what
it's not home ownership, it's a NCP, which facilitates the construction of rental affordable units.
Oh, so it's rental. And do we know what the income restrictions are for that?
So yes, this cluster will be units affordable to household with incomes between 30% and 70% AMI as the time of the NCP term sheet.
Okay, okay. And who's going to manage the property then? If they're rental, who's the property manager?
So these developments will be facilitated by a developer that has been designated by HPD through their NIHOP NCP RFP, and that is Cypress Hill Local Development Corporation with money.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
and this is on the same RFP cluster with, you may recall the Fulton Street project that the commission certified in November.
Yes.
So it's part of the same group of buildings.
Okay, okay. And one last thing, I noticed in the renderings, some of them seem to indicate slots for window air conditioners and others don't, indicating that they probably have a central air system. And I'm just wondering, I mean, mostly now we're moving towards central air because it's more sustainable and it meets some of the local 097 requirements. Do you know, can we find out what the thinking is about that?
Yeah, for sure. I don't have an answer for you right now, but I will make sure to have it for pre-hearing.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay,
yep.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Any additional questions from the commission? Commissioner Marin.
So I basically had the same question. Knowing that HPD is moving to electrified buildings, the question of through-the-wall air conditioner units really begs the question. So if we can get more clarification from HPD on that and when they plan to initiate their electrification requirements, that would be very helpful.
Of course.
Thank you, Patty.
Thank you, Orlando.
Any additional questions from the commission? Okay, thank you, Alexandra. Then this item is certified.
Thank you, Anita. Bye.
Fourth item on our agenda is a certification of a zoning map amendment in Brooklyn Community District 11. Our presenter is Sanmati Nayak.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Next slide, please. This is a private application by Propsy Partners for a zoning map amendment to establish a C24 commercial overlay within an existing R6 zoning district. The site is located at 2300 Propsy Avenue in Brooklyn's Gravesend neighborhood in Community District 11. The action would facilitate a commercial use on the ground floor of an as-of-right 23-storied building. Next slide, please. The site is located within an R6 district. The surrounding area includes R5, R6, and M31 zoning districts. There is a C22 commercial overlay along a portion of Bath Avenue, a block to the north, and the area includes a mix of land uses, including residential, commercial, light industrial, and parking. The community facility uses include a nursing home, a public school, and senior living facilities. Next slide. The site is located on the southern edge of the neighborhood between the 120-foot wide Cropsey Avenue to the north and the 300-foot wide Shore Parkway to the south. There are a few major corridors in the surrounding area. 86th Street is a major 100-foot wide shopping corridor. It is a major local and regional destination commercial center. Bay Parkway is another 100-foot wide mixed-use thoroughfare 3 blocks to the west. The residential uses to the north are predominantly 1 and 2 family houses and multifamily buildings along Cropsey Avenue. 3 blocks to the west is Bensonhurst Park. It's a popular community destination and includes a variety of activities and sporting events. The area to the south of the project site across from Shore Parkway is comprised of 1 to 2 storied commercial and light industrial uses. The notable ones include Caesars Space Shopping Center, which includes a variety of stores such as Target, Best Buy, Kohl's, and BJ's. I want to note here that Shore Parkway, there are no cross streets which connects the project area and the adjacent lots to the BJ's or the shopping areas across from the site across from Shore Parkway. The nearest walking through street is from Bay Parkway, which is 3 blocks to the west. And generally, this area is very pedestrian unfriendly. It's mostly accessed by cars. In terms of transit, the nearest subway stop is along Bay Parkway, providing access to D train at 86th Street, which is close to 3/4 of a mile to the northwest. And there are buses which run along Cropsey Avenue. The bus stop is located right across from the project site. Next slide. This is the view of the as of right building. It is under construction and right across from the project built pursuant to the R6 zoning. Next slide. The proposed development site shown in red, lot 105, is a 45,000 square foot under construction with a 23-storied mixed-use building we saw earlier. It contains 154 dwelling units and approximately 39,000 square feet of community facility use intended to be a school. It has a total area of approximately 239,000 square foot and is built to a FAR of 4.38. The proposed commercial overlay boundary, which can be seen in the inset map, is approximately 250 feet wide and 200 feet deep. Next slide. The proposed mapping of the commercial overlay over the existing R6 district would facilitate the commercial use within the ground floor of this building. The proposed use, commercial use would be approximately 35,000 square feet of floor area, and it is intended to be a supermarket. There is no change to the proposed as of right bulk. The purpose of the proposed rezoning is to facilitate the ground floor commercial use in an as of right building. And as mentioned earlier, there is a very strong desire or a need in this community for having a grocery store which is within walkable distance from this area. The nearest grocery store is along the 86th Street corridor, more than half a mile away. Next slide. So to summarize, this is a zoning map amendment to establish a C24 commercial overlay within an existing R6 zoning district. The proposed actions would facilitate approximately 35,000 square feet of commercial floor area containing a supermarket in an as of right 23-storied mixed-use development. That concludes the presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Sanmati. Are there questions from the commission? Commissioner, Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you, Chair. There's a contemplation of a supermarket, Sanmati, but has the developer actually gotten a commitment from a supermarket as we speak?
They are I'm not sure. The last we checked, they were in talks on, or they were considering, but I'm not sure if they have gotten a commitment yet. I will check up on that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ortiz.
I have the same question as Vice Chair Knuckles. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the commission? Okay, if not, this item is certified. Thank you so much.
The fifth item on our agenda is a certification of a zoning map and zoning text amendments in Brooklyn Community District 2. Our presenter is Amrita Mahesh.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Next slide, please. This is an application for a zoning map amendment and a zoning text amendment to facilitate an approximately 27,900 square foot predominantly residential development with 24 apartments, 8 of which would be affordable apartments, and 3,500 square feet of ground floor retail space in the Borum Hill neighborhood of Community District 2 in Brooklyn. Next slide. The applicant is seeking a zoning map amendment from an M12 district to an R7D district with a C24 overlay and R6B districts, as well as a zoning text amendment to establish an MIH area. Next slide. The project area is in the southern edge of the Borum Hill neighborhood between downtown Brooklyn and Gowanus. The surrounding area is developed with a wide range of building typologies and a mix of uses, including 2 to 3 story mixed use and residential buildings, multifamily apartment buildings, institutional buildings, houses of worship, offices, and some lofts and warehouses. The development site is located along 3rd Avenue, which is a 2-way mixed use corridor and local truck route that connects downtown Brooklyn to Bay Ridge. 4th Avenue, one of the major thoroughfares in Brooklyn, is located 1 block east of the project area. Uses along 4th Avenue vary and include commercial and semi-industrial uses in multifamily walk-up buildings, as well as newer apartment buildings. To the south are the NYCHA Wyckoff Gardens and 572 Warren Street developments, which consist of buildings ranging from 6 to 21 stories. The Brooklyn High School for the Arts, PS 38, and the North Pacific Street Playground are located a few blocks to the north and northwest of the project area. The project area is within the transit zone with access to several subway lines, regional transit, bus lines, and city bike access as well. The Atlantic Avenue Barclay Center and Atlantic Terminal stations are located a quarter mile away, and the B37 and B103 bus lines make stops along 3rd and 4th Avenues, respectively. Next slide. The project area is mapped with an M12 district, which permits commercial and manufacturing uses up to a maximum FAR of 2, and some community facility uses up to an FAR of 4.8. The M12 district allows for a variety of light manufacturing uses such as repair shops, wholesale services, and storage facilities. Buildings in M12 districts are governed by a sky exposure plane beginning at a height of 60 feet or 4 stories. Parking and loading requirements vary by use. The areas immediately east of the project area along 3rd Avenue as well as further north are in an R7A district with a C24 commercial overlay. Other zoning districts in the surrounding area include a number of medium-density R6 and R7 residential districts and are largely improved with row houses and multifamily residential buildings. The special downtown Brooklyn district is located 3 blocks north of the project area and seeks to encourage high-density development in Brooklyn's central business district. Areas to the south and east of the project area, including portions of 4th Avenue, are within the recently adopted special Gowanus mixed-use district. Next slide. The project area was located in the Bergen Street Urban Renewal Area, which was approved by the City Planning Commission in July of 1971 and expired in 2011. The Bergen Street Urban Renewal Plan designated Block 388 for industrial uses per the predominant land uses in the surrounding area, and planning objectives at the time. Lots 34 through 37 and 41 within the project area, as well as Lot 1 on the Nevin Street frontage, highlighted here in the blue, are city-owned properties under the control of HPD. The lots are currently used as accessory surface parking, with the exception of Lot 41, which is used as an accessory office space by the neighboring ULURP Corporation, located on Lot 19, for a long-term lease agreement with HPD. The lease restricts uses on these lots to use as accessory to the industrial facility. I would note that there is an application under review by the department for a rezoning of portions of Block 388 by the ULURP Corporation to facilitate a new mixed-use development on lots 19, 42, and 51. The ULURP Corporation is in the process of shifting their operations to other facilities elsewhere in the city. Next slide. The development site, Lot 31, is a roughly 5,000 square foot lot, improved with a gas station constructed in 1986. The parcel has approximately 50 feet of frontage along Bergen Street and 100 feet of frontage along 3rd Avenue. Here is a view, next slide, of the non-applicant controlled lots within the project area along 3rd Avenue. Next slide, please. Improved with surface parking and a medical clinic. Next slide. And here is a view of 3rd Avenue looking north. This segment of 3rd Avenue has a mapped width of 70 feet and is considered narrow for the purposes of zoning. Next slide. This is a view looking west along Wyckoff Street. The NYCHA Wyckoff Gardens campus is to the left of the image. Next slide. And here is a view of Bergen Street looking west. Next slide. The proposed development would contain approximately 24,400 square feet of residential space, with 24 dwelling units, including 8 MIH units, and 3,500 square feet of ground floor commercial retail along the 3rd Avenue frontage. The building would rise to a base height of 65 feet and after a 15-foot setback would reach a maximum height of 85 feet or 8 stories. Next slide. The proposed actions consist of a zoning map amendment from the M12 district to an R7D C24 district and R6B districts. The proposed R7D C24 district would be mapped at a depth of 100 feet from 3rd Avenue on the eastern end of Block 388. Lot 42 and part of Lot 43 would be amended from M12 to R6B by extending the existing R6B district to the east to align with the proposed R7D C24 district. Next slide. The proposed R7D district permits a maximum FAR of 5.6 with inclusionary housing and generally yields 8 to 11 story buildings. Above a base height of 60 to 85 feet, the building must set back before rising to a maximum height of 110 feet or 115 feet with a qualifying ground floor. Parking is required for 50% of all dwelling units, with affordable units waived inside the transit zone. The proposed C24 commercial overlay permits a wide range of neighborhood commercial retail uses, up to a maximum FAR of 2 within R7D districts. The proposed R6B district would permit a maximum FAR of 2.2 with base heights of 30 to 45 feet and a maximum height of 55 feet with a qualifying ground floor. Next slide. In addition, a zoning text amendment to Appendix F of the zoning resolution is being requested to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area coterminous with the rezoning area. MIH options 1 and 2 would be mapped. The proposed development would comply with option 2, which requires that 30% of the new residential floor area be reserved for incomes averaging 80% EMI and below. 8 of the 24 units would comply with option 2. Next slide. The applicant believes that the requested actions would be appropriate to facilitate the proposed development in an area with abundant transit access along an evolving mixed-use corridor connecting two growing neighborhoods, Gowanus and downtown Brooklyn. The applicant also notes that the proposed districts would be compatible with similar medium-density zoning districts in the immediate vicinity. That concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Amrita. Are there any questions from the commission? If not, this application is certified. Thank you.
The sixth item on our agenda is a certification of a site selection and special permit in the Bronx Community District 4. Our presenter is Manny Lagares.
This is the application for the new facility for EMS station number 17. Next slide, please. The applicant is the New York City Fire Department, and the co-applicant is the Department of Citywide Administrative Services. They are seeking a site selection of city-owned property and a special permit pursuant to Zoning Resolution Section 7467 in order to allow an EMS station in a residential district. Next slide, please. The site is located in the concourse section of Bronx Community District number 4 on a block bounded by East 169th Street to the north, Morris Avenue to the east, East 167 to the south, Grant Avenue to the west. The site, which is outlined in blue, is approximately 15,000 square feet, is currently vacant, fenced and paved, and is immediately adjacent to the north by an existing firehouse. The remainder of the block is predominantly residential with 3+ story attached homes, and you also have 5- and 6-story residential buildings. Across Morris Avenue, you have more or less the same 5-, 6-story buildings and also a couple of 3-story buildings. And as you move to the west across Grant Avenue, you see there's a higher density there. You have residential units ranging in height from 7 to 9 stories. And as you go further west, you have the Grand Concourse Historic District. Next slide, please. Here, again, you see the predominance of residential within the area. The site is on R71. It also has commercial overlays along East 167th and East 169th Streets. Also want to mention that you have the public transportation is very good in this area with the number 1 and 2 bus lines traveling north-south along the Grand Concourse. You also have the B and D line, which stops at East 167 and East 170th Street. And in addition to that, you also have 2 buses, the number 32 and number 35 buses, which travel east-west across East 167th Street. Next slide, please. This is a photo of the development site. We're looking northwest at the site. As you can see, the firehouse is adjacent to the site, and in the background you have those 3-story attached houses, as well as the rest of the residential area behind that. Next slide, please. This is looking in the other direction. Now you're looking southwest at the site. Morris Avenue is a 2-way street. Next slide, please. And here you have a slide showing you the existing EMS facility, which is located at 1080 Ogden Avenue. That's the one to the left. That facility was constructed in the early 1900s as a firehouse. And as the fire department in their application states that this facility is in poor condition, and therefore they're looking for this location, which is located, the proposed location, which is located approximately 1 mile away from the old facility. Next slide, please. The applicant is proposing to construct a two-story building, approximately 11,177 square feet. As you can see by this slide, within the building, you'll have 6 parking spaces for the ambulances or bays, which are located at the center. And on this floor, you will also have the lieutenant's office, storage area, also a washing station for the ambulances. In addition to that, there will be accessory parking, 12 spaces on the ground floor, which will be shared by the staff of the firehouse adjacent to this site and the relocated EMS facility staff. There will also be below grade parking. That will be another 23 spaces. So the total accessory parking spaces will be 35 spaces. Next slide, please. This is the second floor, and the captain's office is located on this floor, as well as there'll be a training area, a dining room. There'll be bathrooms and locker rooms for the women and the men working in this fire EMS facility. There will be a staff of 80 and and they will operate 24/7. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the design of the facility, but before I would like to mention also that as I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, there is a zoning permit that is being sought here, and it has findings. One of the findings is that the facility is going to be located that will serve the area in which it will be located. The response from the fire department is that yes, it will cover this area. The second finding that there were serious difficulties in locating a site in which it will be allowed as of right. The fire department in their application stated that they looked at approximately 15 sites, and they were not able to find the sites that was suitable for them within the commercial overlays. This uses a lot in commercial overlays because of citing. They're looking for a lot size between 10 and 15,000 square feet. And the last finding that has to be made is that the fire department will not have apparatus going through the local streets. In this case, these are ambulances that will be at this facility, and the way that operates is that the ambulances are sent out early in their shifts to locations within the catchment area where they await to be dispatched to an emergency. Before closing and taking questions, I also want to state that the design of this building has been approved by the Public Design Commission. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Manny, for your presentation.
You're welcome.
Are there questions from the commission? Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, I assume that the existing firehouse adjacent to this site was obviously built before 1961. So is that the reason why this facility, a community facility, requires a special permit to be built here? In other words, if they were going to build another firehouse, would it require a special permit to be built at this time?
Well, if they require a firehouse, which is not the case here.
No, I know.
The location that will be suitable.
No, I guess my question is, I'm somewhat surprised that a special permit is required for, in an R71, let me be more succinct. In an R71, a community facility is not as of right. There must be a special permit in order to allow a community facility such as this, right?
I believe,
In this case, where you have one, right?
I'm sorry, Manny, I think we're, my understanding is that the
Yeah, we're breaking
EMS
up.
facility, am I breaking up?
I can hear you.
Okay, is that the EMS facility does require a special permit. We'll look into whether a fire station is in the same use group. There's some nuance here with use groups that I want to make sure that we're giving you the correct answer.
And please don't get me wrong, I have no opposition to it.
Sure,
I was just
understood.
more interested.
It's a wrinkle of the zoning resolution that will clarify.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Commissioner Bernie?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Manny. Yeah, I just
You're
wanted to comment that, these EMS has been, the sort of poor cousin of the uniformed services for a long time. And for many years, they were ill-housed or even homeless. And they're finally, over the years, getting new stations. And I think this is really welcome. I'm very happy to see that we're giving these guys a good facility for EMS 17.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments from the commission? Okay, seeing none, then this application is certified. Thank you, Manny.
Okay, you're very welcome.
The seventh item on our agenda is a certification of a zoning map and zoning text amendment in the Bronx Community District 12, and Manny will present this one as well.
Okay, this is the application for 1930 AD Avenue rezoning. Next slide, please. The applicant is Centerland Realty LLC, and they're seeking a zoning map amendment from R4 to R6B and a zoning text amendment to Appendix F of the zoning resolution to designate the rezoning area as an MIH area. Next slide, please. The project area is located in the Baychester section of Bronx Community District number 12 on a block bounded by Adi Avenue on the north, Edson Avenue to the east, Arno Avenue to the south, and Grace Avenue to the west. The project area, which is outlined in blue, consists of 4 lots with 1930 Adi Avenue, the corner lot in red, being the development site. Immediately to the south, immediately and adjacent to the south are 2-story attached homes, and adjacent to these to the south, you have a small area. You have an area where you have commercial uses such as an African market, check cashing place, a couple of restaurants, and an auto center. And just south of that, across Arno, you have a self-storage facility. However, the remainder of the project area is basically 2- and 3-family attached and semi-detached homes. And looking to the upper right hand of the screen, across the New England Thruway, you can see a Co-op City is in this area. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the land use area map, and you can see again the preponderance of the residential uses. I also want to talk about the public transportation. It's very poor in this area. The nearest subway, nearest train stop is approximately 10 blocks away on Gun Hill Road, and the nearest bus stop is approximately 5 to 6 blocks away. So public transportation is not that good in this area. Next slide, please. This is a photograph of 1930 AD Avenue, which is an existing building built back in the 1930s. Next slide, please. And this slide shows the other properties within the project area, which consists of 3 attached small homes. Next slide, please. And this is an aerial map giving you a view of the project area. We're looking directly at the building from the south, and the building on the right, 1930 AD Avenue, received a C of O back in let me go back to 1938 when it was constructed. It was initially constructed on half of the lot. The lot was approximately 7,000 square feet. So they built a one-story building with a partial second-story addition fronting on AD Avenue, built lot line to lot line. The remainder of the lot was used for customer and employee parking. Now, this building, this is an R4 zoning district, and R4 has a 0.75 FAR. So it exceeds that FAR, even though the R4 does allow a 2.0 for community facilities. This building also lacks front yards and side yard, which is required within the R4 zoning district. Henceforth, and also it's built at 100%. Requirement is for 60%. So they're seeking relief through this rezoning from R4 to R6B, which will also help the adjacent small homes, which are currently on 3,000 square foot lots. The issue with the small homes is that they exceed the maximum FAR, again, 0.75. They're at the range of 1.06 to 1.68. Again, this rezoning will also alleviate this legal situation and make them conforming to the zoning. Next slide, please. The applicant is proposing to have a daycare center within this existing building. The ground floor indicates 3 classrooms, open space, reception area. It will be an elevated building, and there's an area also, a play area for approximately 74 persons. Next slide, please. The second floor, you have 5 classrooms, you have storage areas, you have office space, and you have the boys and girls bathrooms. Again, it's a 2-story building that is being proposed, and they have a commitment from St. Jemiel Daycare Center, which currently operates in District 7, and they're wishing to expand onto this property. Now, I also want to mention that at the top of my presentation, I mentioned that there's a zoning text amendment to Appendix F, and that text amendment allows for both residential and community facility. Now, the residential, if any of these lots were in the future to redevelop, they can actually develop a 4 or 5-story residential building, approximately 50 feet in height, and quality ground floor that would be an additional 5 feet if that were the case. The applicant has selected, first of all, is just interested in this daycare center, does not want to do any housing, and sees the possibility of this future construction. It gives flexibility to the homeowners in the event that they wish to develop in the future. He has selected options 1 and 2. As you know, option 1, 30% of the floor area to persons earning at or below 60% of AMI, and option 2 is for persons earning up to 80% and below of AMI. And the next slide, please. And this is the rendering of the building. And as you already know, the building already exists, and they're seeking legalization in order to modify this building, as well as for bringing the residential uses into compliance with the FAR. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much, Manny. Does the
welcome.
commission have any questions? Commissioner Burney.
Manny, I know this is an existing building, but this is one of the most depressing looking daycare centers I think I've ever seen. I mean, is there nothing they can do? And actually the outside's depressing, but when you get inside, it just gets worse. The lobby is really not adequate for the usage it would get. The interior just looks a sort of rather clumsy layout. There are no real common spaces. The circulation looks cramped. I mean, is there nothing they can do to improve this? I just don't see it being an inviting place. And maybe even the facade where you just go through this tiny slot into this brick box. It's like I don't know, it just doesn't look inviting at all.
Okay. What I can do, I will convey this information to the applicant. And I know that they are watching this presentation and that they will be prepared to give the commission an answer to your questions when it comes back from the community board and from the borough president.
Okay, thank you.
And Commissioner Burney, you know, we've worked with ACS before, and our staff can absolutely discuss this particular location with them in terms of what interventions they might be able to work with the applicant with respect to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Marine.
Thank you, Chair. That's exactly what I was going to ask, because I do recall that a couple of years ago, maybe 2 years ago, we were entertaining all these childcare centers that were coming back, pre-K childcare centers, kindergarten centers. We actually talked about design, and we mentioned, the staff mentioned how they were working on some sort of Part T that would work with any daycare center in terms of beautifying it, gates on the windows, welcoming entrances, and I don't see that any of that has been mentioned here.
No, we will absolutely do that, and we can come back to the commission before the hearing on this to tell you what has transpired in terms of that work for this site.
Yeah, that would be appreciated. I mean, it's kind of, I would say, it's a dream
Questions
area, so
from
anything to pick up that area would be nice.
Agreed. Okay. Any other questions from the commission? If not, thank you, Manny. Item is also certified.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the 8th item on our agenda, which is a pre-hearing review of a special permit UDAP designation and disposition of city-owned property in Manhattan Community District 11. Our presenter is Jose Trucios.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Good afternoon, commissioners. Good afternoon, everyone. Castle 3 is back after completing public review. This application was certified on August 30th and is scheduled for a December 15th public hearing. Next slide, please. The Department of Housing and Preservation and Development seeks an urban development action area designation, a UDAP approval, and a disposition of city-owned property and a special permit to facilitate the development of a 15-story building containing 81 affordable housing units and community facility spaces for comprehensive support services, including counseling and workforce training. Next slide. The development site comprises 3 contiguous vacant city-owned lots in East Harlem Community District 11 and includes blocks 1722, lots 4, 7, and 8. It's bounded by East 123rd Street on the north, west of Park Avenue, and east of Lexington Avenue. Located in R72 district, the development site is adjacent to the 125th Street Special District, Transit Special Land Use District, and the East Harlem Corridors Special District. The development site is 2 blocks south from the MTA Express line and the 456 services, and also the Harlem Metro North Station. The surrounding area consists mainly of high and mid-rise buildings ranging from 7 to 35 stories and various uses. Next slide. The proposed development will be a 15-story building with approximately 81 affordable housing units targeted to formerly homeless and low-income individuals and households, earning between 30% MI and 60% MI, serving extremely and very low-income residents and their families. The building will have a base of approximately 120 feet and a setback of 20 feet before rising to a height of approximately 157 feet, reaching 167 feet with a bulkhead. The proposed use is a nonprofit institution with a sleeping accommodations within use group 3. Pursuant to resolution section 2213 of the zone, a facility shall be classified as a philanthropic or nonprofit institution with sleeping accommodations, so long provided that the owner and operator of the facility is a nonprofit organization and at least 60% of the units in such facility are designated for the special needs of populations and not dispersed throughout the facility. Both requirements in this case do comply. 58 units will be reserved for homeless and formerly incarcerated individuals, and the building will also include a housing unit for a living superintendent. The programming on the building will include outdoor landscape yard space for residential use, supported housing programming, amenities including laundry and bike storage room, as well as a large multi-purpose room. Next slide, please. The proposed development will contain approximately 55,000 zoning square feet of community facility space with an FAR of 6.5. Approval of the zoning special permit would allow a maximum FAR of 6.5 at the development site, which is consistent with the FAR of the proposed development. The statement of findings previously shared with the commission shows compliance with the special permit requirements. And as a right development of a nonprofit institution with the sleeping accommodations, and this zoning lot will be at 3.4 according to the R7 zoning district. Next slide, please. On October 26th, Manhattan Community Board 11 voted to approve the application with the following conditions. The first being that qualified residents of Manhattan Community 11 are given the priority to lease and rent these residential units. The second, for the developer to establish partnerships with local workforce development organizations to source qualified residents of East Harlem for employment opportunities throughout all development stages of this project, and to create a community advisory board for the project in collaboration with Community Board 11. The resolution was approved with a vote of 33 in favor and 0 opposing and 3 abstaining. While we have not received yet the Board of President recommendation, we have been told that the position of the Board of President is favorable in this approach, and we expect to have a recommendation later today and ready for the December 15th public hearing. Next slide. To summarize, the HPD seeks the UDA designation and a UDAP approval, the disposition of city-owned land and the special permit. And approval of these actions will allow for the society, the developer, to provide much needed supported housing for recently incarcerated individuals, paired with critical social services programming, all under one roof in East Harlem. Thank you, and I can answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Jose. Are there questions from the commission? Vice Chair Knuckles, I see your hands.
Thank you, Chair. Just an observation. While it's not, it goes beyond the scope of our review, I nonetheless believe that the recommendations of Community Board 11, as stated in the report, are quite reasonable.
Right. This has been shared with HPD and also with the developer, and they're aware of them.
Thank you. Commissioner Levin?
Yes, thank you, Jose. And another comment that has nothing to do with our responsibilities here. I had raised a question at certification about the large blank wall that looks like it will be there for some time to come on the western facade of the building, and wondering whether it wasn't an opportunity for some kind of a neighborhood art project or some kind of mural to enliven that. I understand it's going to need to be a blank wall because it is a lot line, but it is an opportunity in a neighborhood that is celebrated for its murals to perhaps continue the tradition.
Agreed.
And I wonder if that's something that the Fortune Society has thought about.
That has been shared with the developer and development team, and HPD should be a little better position to answer this on Wednesday.
Okay, thank you.
But if I find any more information, I can definitely reach out to a land use and like that.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, this is on for public hearing on Wednesday. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, the ninth item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a city map amendment in the Bronx Community District 6. Our presenter is Stephen Leonard. Stephen, I can see you, but I can't hear you. Talking? You can start. Stephen, we can't hear you. So we have, I think it was someone from the Bronx office to back up Stephen on this item.
Yes, this is Manny Harris.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there you go, Stephen.
Oh, very good. Okay, my apologies.
That's right.
Next slide, please. So the proposed map amendment would involve the elimination, discontinuance, and closing of East 178th Street, east of Morris Park Avenue in the West Farms neighborhood of Bronx Community District 6. And the proposed amendment would facilitate the future as-of-right development of the applicant's property. Next slide, please. The project site is located within an M11 zoning district. Land uses within 600 feet of the project site are predominantly mixed use and residential to the west of Morris Park Avenue, and commercial, manufacturing, and transportation related to the east of Morris Park Avenue, with the Bronx River Parkway just east of the project area. The surrounding area is well served by public transportation, including the East 180th Street 2 and 5 subway station located a quarter mile north, and several local bus lines in the area. Next slide, please. Here's a bird's eye view of the project area. The applicant's property is outlined in yellow, and the proposed street demapping area is outlined in blue. The subject portion of East 178th Street to be demapped is city-owned and mapped to a width of 60 feet, and it terminates in a cul-de-sac approximately 235 feet east of Morris Park Avenue. It is not open or in use as a street and is currently enclosed by fencing and used as parking by adjacent owners. The area proposed to be demapped and acquired by the applicant is approximately 18,400 square feet. The applicant's property to the north of the portion of 178th to be demapped is an irregular triangular shaped lot of approximately 25,500 square feet. That lot is currently a paved lot enclosed by a chain link fence and leased to Con Ed for parking. Next slide, please. Here is a conceptual site plan. The applicant does not have a final development plan at this time, but has stated that it would be as of right under the M11 zoning, and is envisioned to be a 2-story medical office shaded in gray. The applicant's use of the proposed street demapping area itself would be limited to surface parking because DEP has requested, or the Department of Environmental Protection has requested an easement for the area below grade to facilitate infrastructure related to a capital project to reduce combined sewer overflow into the nearby Bronx River. Next slide, please. Here are some photos of the site from the west, southwest, and northwest. Next slide, please, from Morris Park Avenue. Oh, that's the last slide. Next slide, please. Next slide again. And last slide, or I'm sorry, one more. This is a view of the area, the area of the street to be demapped. Next slide. On November 11th, Community Board 6 voted 21 in favor and 0 opposed with 9 abstentions to approve the application. And today, on December 13th, the Borough President issued a recommendation also to approve the application. Concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Stephen. Are there any questions for Stephen? Okay, seeing none. This is on for public hearing on Wednesday, the 15th. Thank you.
Thanks.
The 10th item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a zoning map amendment in Queens Community District 3. Our presenter is Kathy Coe.
Good afternoon, Commission. Next slide, please. This is a private application in the East Elmhurst neighborhood of Queens Community District 3 and was certified on August 30th. The applicant, 9920 Realty Corp., proposes to map a C23 commercial overlay on an existing R32 zoning district to facilitate the development of a single-story commercial building. Next slide, please. The proposed project area is in East Elmhurst, which is in north central Queens, and the project area is located roughly 1 mile south of the LaGuardia Airport, and the area is largely served by buses. Next slide, please. The proposed development would consist of a new single-story commercial building with a total of approximately 5,573 square feet at an FAR of 0.91, and the proposed development would include 3 small retail stores with entrances along Astoria Boulevard, and off-street parking requirements are waived. Next slide. To facilitate this development, the applicant proposes a zoning map amendment to map a C23 commercial overlay on the existing R32 district. Next slide, please. And on November 18th, Queens Community Board 3 held a public hearing. 21 members voted to disapprove the application and 12 voted in favor. And the board discussed concerns around the impact of construction on the adjacent property. Next slide, please. The Queensborough President held a public hearing on December 2nd and recommended to approve the application with the following conditions: that a pre-construction survey be conducted, that the applicant provides the adjacent neighbor with a point of contact, that any precautions should be taken to minimize construction impacts, and that final construction drawings be shared with the community board and the adjacent neighbor. The applicant has also committed in a written letter to cover any insurance, legal, or engineering fees for the adjacent property owner. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Are there any questions for Kathy? Commissioner Burney.
Oh, thank you. Kathy, do we know the nature of the concerns about the construction impacts?
Yeah, there is just concerns. The development site currently is a single family 2-story home, as is the adjacent site. And there are concerns about, the windows, and they wouldn't be obstructed because this the proposed development is a single-story commercial building. There's also a shared beam that they have some concerns about. So the architect and engineer will be here on Wednesday to kind of walk through all of the construction plans. And
okay. But that's not an unprecedented situation, is it, really?
No, it's not.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions? Oh, any questions? I thought I saw someone else's hand raised. Maybe they took it down.
That was mine, but Commissioner Burney asked
I
the
don't
question.
see any other questions. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kathy. Unless there are additional questions, this item is also on for public hearing this Wednesday.
Okay, the 11th item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a zoning map and zoning text amendment in Queens Community District 12. Our presenter is Stephen Everett.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Go to the next slide, please. This is a private application by BG Sutphin LLC to develop a 173-unit senior affordable building in downtown Jamaica in Queens Community District 12. BG Sutphin LLC is comprised of two entities: Breaking Ground, which manages or has constructed approximately 3,800 housing units in the Northeast, and Community Healthcare Network, which operates a network of 13 healthcare centers in the city, providing a range of services including dental, nutrition, wellness, and behavioral healthcare. To facilitate the development, the applicant requests a zoning map amendment from a C45X district within the special downtown Jamaica district to a C63 district. Next slide, please. Access to the Archer Avenue Sutphin Boulevard station is facilitated by the E, J, and Z subway lines, as well as the Long Island Railroad and air train to JFK. The project area is located just 3 blocks to the south. North and east of the project area, you can also see King Park, and York College is located further to the east. Next slide, please. The applicant proposes to demolish the existing single-story building on the site and construct a 15-story, 173-unit building comprised entirely of low-income senior units, all of which would be managed by Breaking Ground. 70% of the units would be reserved for seniors aged 62 and older with an income of 50% or less of the AMI, and these would be considered heirs units. The remaining 30% of units would be reserved for the formerly homeless and seniors aged 55 and older, some of whom may have special care needs. The building would also house amenity spaces such as fitness, community, and computer rooms, and the ground floor and cellar would house a 15,000 square foot health clinic operated by CHN. These services would include clinical, psychiatric, and primary medical needs for building residents, and CHN would continue to provide general healthcare services for the broader community. The project area is located in the transit zone with such close proximity to the Archer Avenue Sutphin Boulevard station, the applicant does not propose the development of any parking spaces. Next slide, please. The ground floor plan shows the location's frontage on both 97th Avenue, where access to CHN's community facility space would occur, and Sutphin Boulevard, where all residential entry would be facilitated. CHN would have approximately 15,000 square feet of space on the ground floor and in the cellar. Next slide, please. All residential units would be located above the ground floor, and the building would rise to a roof height of approximately 159 feet, with setbacks along both Sutphin Boulevard and 97th Avenue. The setback from Sutphin Boulevard would occur, as you can see here, above the 5th floor, with the community facility entry located on 97th Avenue. Next slide, please. Similarly, the setback from 97th Avenue would occur above the 5th floor, with the residential entry shown on the southernmost portion of the western facade. Next slide, please. To facilitate the development, the applicant proposes 2 actions. The first is a zoning map amendment from a C45X downtown Jamaica district to a C63 district, thereby increasing the maximum residential FAR from 5.0 with inclusionary housing to 8.0 with MIH. The C63 district is already located along the north side of 97th Avenue, and the applicants propose to extend that to block 10030 at a depth of 100 feet from the street line. Next slide, please. The applicants also propose a zoning text amendment to map MIH coterminous with the project area. The options would include 1 and 2, whereby 25 or 30% of the units would be permanently affordable pursuant to the option chosen at the time of development. The map on this slide shows the extent of the inclusionary housing designated area adopted with the Jamaica Plan rezoning, and mapping MIH at the project location would remove the inclusive project location, would remove it from the IHDA program area location. Next slide, please. Queens Community District 12 held a public hearing at the board on October 20th and recommended disapproval of the applications by a vote of 0 in favor, 40 opposed, and 0 abstaining. In their consideration, the board noted concerns about the lack of adequate parking for residents and visitors, the lack of a loading berth, and asked why only 50% of the units would be reserved for residents and the community board. Excuse me, the residents of the community board. The commission received in its package a letter from the applicants outlining concerns heard during public review and subsequent commitments related to providing off-site parking and local hiring during construction and after opening. The applicant team will be prepared to discuss these in more detail at the hearing Wednesday. On November 4th, the Queensborough president held a hearing on this application and issued a recommendation on December 2nd for approval with the following conditions. The applicant should commit to a target of 30% minimum rate during construction and post-construction of working with locally owned business, MWBE firms, 50% local hiring, and locally community-based organizations for capacity building and job fairs. And there should be quarterly meetings with Queens Community Board 12 to report on the success of reaching these goals. And again, the applicant team will be here Wednesday to discuss these commitments that they've made. Thank you, and I can now take any questions.
Thank you, Stephen. Are there questions from the commission? Okay, I don't see any. So this will also be on for hearing on Wednesday. Thank you very much.
Item 12 on the agenda is a city council modification scope determination for 79 Key Street. The city council proposes to strike MIH option 1 or option 2 and replace it with the deep affordability option. Staff believes that this modification is within scope.
Thank you. So we're asked to send a scope determination to the city council. All in favor of us sending such a letter, please say yay.
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 Any opposed? All right, we'll send that letter. Thank you very much.
Item number 13 is a city council modification scope determination for the special Brooklyn Navy Yard. Connie Chan is here to discuss.
Good afternoon, commissioners. This application for the special Brooklyn Navy Yard District for a zoning text amendment and a zoning map amendment to facilitate the expansion of the Brooklyn Navy Yard was approved by the City Planning Commission on October 20th. On December 7th, the City Council voted to approve the proposed actions with modifications to the zoning text amendment. Next slide. Is the addition of a biennial reporting requirement no later than April of 2023 to be submitted to the chairperson of the City Planning Commission and to the Speaker of the City Council. The report will include information on the following: all businesses in the special district, including the business name, address, type of business, size, and lease duration, new leases executed during the reporting period, the amount of new floor area created after the adoption of the special district, broken down by the use groups that are listed here, and the number of buildings developed or enlarged during the reporting period with the associated amount of floor area and uses. The agency has determined that these modifications are within scope and raise no land use or environmental issues requiring further review. I'm happy to take.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Connie on these modifications? Okay, thank you very much, Connie. So we're asked to send a scope determination letter to the council. We do believe these modifications to be within scope. So I will ask again, if you believe these modifications are in scope, can you please say aye?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so we will send this letter to the city council. Thank you.
Item 14 is a city council modification scope determination for 10316 Van Wyck Expressway rezoning. The city council proposes to strike MIH option 2, leaving only option 1. Staff believe that this modification is within scope, and I will note that Commissioner Rompashad is recused on this item.
Thank
you. So we again need a vote that the modifications are within scope, and we're authorized to send this letter to the City Council. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, hearing none. Thank you. We will send this letter to the City Council.
The 15th item on the agenda is a City Council modification scope determination for 16005 Archer Avenue. Stephen Everett is here to discuss. Stephen?
Thank you. While the department has determined that the geographic limitation of the proposed CPC authorization to this development site is within scope, we also find it a disappointing outcome. As analyzed in the EIS, the authorization was proposed to be available to zoning lots throughout the special downtown Jamaica district that had frontage on a street such as Archer Avenue, where curb cuts are prohibited, as well as frontage on a non-restricted street, and further subject to the findings of the authorization to prevent traffic congestion and any pedestrian and vehicular conflicts. Thank you.
There may have been a
Thank you very much, Stephen. Are there any questions? All right, then we're asked to send the scope determination letter. Anyone on the commission that agrees that it's appropriate to send the letter that the modifications are within scope, please say yay. Yay.
Yay. Yes.
Yay.
Yay.
Aye.
Disappointed, yay.
Thank you. Any opposed? Okay, no opposed. So we will send this letter to the City Council. Thank you.
Okay. The 16th item on our agenda is a City Council modification scope determination for the fresh update zoning text amendment. Alex Plakis is here to discuss.
Hello, commissioners. Next slide, please. So this is a modification of the geography. The City Council has modified the proposal within Brooklyn Community District 12. Next slide, please. This was the approved geography when it was approved by the City Planning Commission. Next slide, please. And this is the modified geography. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
We will note that the staff believes that this modification is within scope.
Thank you. So we again need to take a vote to authorize the sending of a letter determining that the mod is in scope. Please say yay if you agree. Yay.
Yay. More disappointment. More disappointment. Yay.
I understand. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you very much. We will send this letter to the City Council.
Right. For Wednesday, December 15th, 2021, staff have prepared reports for the NYPD Bronx Special Victims Services site selection, 749 Van Sinderen Avenue, and the Coney Island East Parkland map split. Also scheduled for a decision on Wednesday are 1 Java Street waterfront authorization, and Alexandra Patti Diaz is here with a quick update on this. Am I right on that? Alexandra here? I don't see her, but my recollection is that the update is that the request by the commission to have the waiver for the fence on the pier only apply to the existing fence, and that when that existing fence is replaced, that it would be replaced with a complying fence. That has been baked into the restrictive deck, and I believe a note has been put on this drawings as well. So yes, probably didn't need Alexandra for that anyway. I remembered it. So moving on, we also have scheduled for vote 109 Sylvia Street, 3541 Alvine Avenue, and 190, 196 Bennett Avenue, both in Staten Island. And then on January 5th, we have scheduled for a vote 200 Madison Avenue landmark designation. There was a briefing sheet in your package. And then moving on to post-hearing follow-ups, we have 2892 Nostrand Avenue rezoning. David Weissglass is here with an update on this. David?
Good afternoon, commissioners. This is a private application by Micro Realty seeking a zoning map amendment and zoning text amendment at 2892 Nostrand Avenue in the Madison neighborhood of Community District 15 in Brooklyn. The application was presented at the public meeting on December 1st. Next slide, please. Prior to the public hearing, the department received significant amount of public input submitted online, mostly in opposition, and a number of speakers were present at the public meeting on December 1st. The bulk of public comment in opposition, both prior to the hearing, since the hearing, and at the hearing itself, was centered around the issues of traffic congestion, inadequate parking provided in the building, and the height of the building being out of context with the surrounding area. The proposed development will certainly be of a greater height than many buildings in the neighborhood. However, given its location and the specific circumstances in this area, the department still finds the proposed zoning districts to be appropriate. Next slide, please. This slide shows the location of the project within the larger context in the Midwood neighborhood. Here you can see the project area outlined in yellow with the specific development site outlined in red. The project area is very close to areas already zoned for R7A along Kings Highway. Further, it is very well served by several bus routes. The B44 and B44 SBS run north and south along Nostrand Avenue to Flatbush Junction. The BM4 express bus route also runs along Nostrand Avenue, eventually to Lower Manhattan. The B82, B82 SBS, and B7 routes run along Kings Highway. The project area is about 1 mile from both the Avenue M Q train subway stop and the Kings Highway B and Q subway stop. Next slide, please. This is a location that can accommodate the height permitted within the R7A zoning district. As seen in this image taken from south of the project area at the intersection of Avenue P and Nostrand Avenue, this is a particularly wide street and 100 feet wide, which can accommodate the additional bulk allowed by the R7A regulations. Additional relief to the proposed bulk is provided in this specific location, with PFC Norton Playground directly to the north of the project area and the angled intersections of Marine Parkway and Avenue P with Nostrand Avenue, providing additional undeveloped space. Further, it's located near the intersection of Kings Highway, which is 140 feet in width. Therefore, while the building may be taller than many others in the surrounding neighborhood, it is situated in a location that can accommodate this height. Further, this image shows that the proposed development will not be the only large project on the street. A 7-story building with 69 dwelling units is located directly south of the development site, as seen here in the foreground on the left. Next slide, please. PFC Norton Playground is in the foreground of this image, which is on Nostrand Avenue facing south, with the development site shown by the yellow arrow. The image demonstrates not only the considerable width of the street, but it illustrates that the proposed development's effect at its location will be quite reasonable. Next slide, please. This image shows the intersection of Kings Highway and Nostrand Avenue looking southwest, with the development site's location indicated by the yellow arrow. The image demonstrates that taller buildings of greater density have already been developed in the area, adjacent to districts of low density residential development. Further, many of these existing buildings on Kings Highway are not only tall, but have a greater FAR than the proposed development itself. Many of the buildings seen here actually exceed the FAR permitted in the R7A zoning districts to be mapped at the project site. The department finds it appropriate to allow greater density along wider streets with strong transit accessibility, such as Nostrand Avenue and Kings Highway. You'll recall that this portion of Kings Highway is already zoned R7A, and as such, the proposed project will only continue this reasonable density to another wide street within close proximity. Further, the proposed development will have a lower FAR than many of these buildings on Kings Highway, many of which already abut low-density residential buildings. Next slide, please. Community members also raised concerns that the proposed development does not include enough off-street parking spaces and additional traffic congestion will result. I'll address these concerns together as they're closely related. It's first important to note that a negative declaration was issued on this project, indicating that per seeker standards, the proposal would not result in a significant increase in traffic congestion. Please note that in response to these concerns, the applicant increased the number of proposed vehicular parking spaces from 24, which is what was presented as certification, to 56. This is far in excess of the required number of parking spaces for a building with 55 dwelling units, as such buildings typically require only about 23 spaces. In addition, alternative environmentally friendly modes of transportation are increasing in usage and popularity. According to the 2019 American Community Survey, more than 50% of commuters use public transit, more than 7% walk to work, and more than 5% of employees work from home. However, please note that these numbers were taken prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, so this percentage of employees working from home is likely to be an undercount. Next slide, please. Community District 15 has a car ownership rate of 66%, and the Madison NTA has an ownership rate of 71%. While both of these surpass the Brooklyn car ownership rate of 45%, additional research will show the car ownership rates of residents in new buildings with 4 or more units have significantly lower rates of car ownership. With this data in mind, it appears that the provision of 56 vehicular parking spaces, more than double the requirement, is more than adequate to serve the residents of the building. Next slide, please. Concerns had been raised about the feasibility and layout of the proposed parking in the cellar, as well as the number of bicycle parking spaces. While this is outside of the scope of the specific map amendment action before the commission, the applicant has responded to these concerns by increasing the number of bicycle parking spaces from 21 to 41. Concerns about the vehicular parking layout and organization have been raised to the applicant, who's provided more detail in the slide. Next slide, please. The project site, as shown here, overlaid with other areas of inclusionary housing and mandatory inclusionary housing, shows that the project site is more than 1 mile away from the nearest inclusionary housing area. Next slide, please. These maps, taken from HPD's website, show buildings with affordable units that have been developed or preserved as part of the Housing New York plan. The image on the left shows Community District 15 only, and the right image shows the entire borough. These images demonstrate the dearth of affordable housing preservation and development in these areas of Brooklyn. Next slide, please. If the proposal were to be modified to reduce the proposed R7A zoning to R6A, the building could still rise to a maximum height of 85 feet or 8 stories, but a total of 14 total units for affordable units would be lost compared to what is proposed and permitted under the R7A proposal. Next slide, please. This is a massing model produced by the applicant team showing the project's proposed bulk if the development site's proposed zoning district were reduced to R6A rather than R7A. As stated, the building could still rise to a maximum of 8 stories or 85 feet as shown here. Next slide, please. In conclusion, the department finds that the proposed zoning map amendment and zoning text amendment are appropriate in this neighborhood. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any zoning map amendment have.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David. Are there any questions from the commission? Commissioner Levin.
I really don't have a question, but just an observation. I wanted to thank, I imagine there's quite a few folks in the Brooklyn office who worked on this presentation for facing up so forthrightly to the comments that we heard at the public hearing. You know, this one is really a tough one because in fact, this building, proposed new building, it would poke a large hole in the area context. And if I were living out back of this proposed building, I'd be as upset as some of the neighbors we heard from. But here we have to make a decision between area context and planning for growth. I do think that it's not entirely fair to cite what's going on Kings Highway as you know, related to this, because when you round that corner, it really is quite a different area. But the real question is, what should be happening on the Nostrand Avenue corridor? And it's absolutely right that this is a very wide street that can take a lot of height. So I don't really know where I am on this, except to be torn between my desire to support neighborhoods that don't want to see the context of their neighborhoods destroyed and the desire to plan for affordable housing. I don't think I can think of a project that's come before us that you know, puts those two in such direct opposition, and they're both competing goods here. So, but thank you for laying it out in a way that lets us think about it pretty thoughtfully.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Levin, for those comments. Are there any additional comments or questions from the commission? Okay, I don't see any. Thank you.
Okay, and we have.
Wait, I'm sorry. One more thing. Have we heard anything from the Brooklyn Borough President? We still don't have a recommendation from the Borough President? Okay.
That's
no,
correct.
not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
Okay. And then our last item for post-hearing follow-up, 2134 Coyle Street. We did not prepare a presentation on this. If there's any further questions, we can take those now.
Are there any questions on Coyle Street? If not,
all right.
Is there any other business, Ryan?
No, there is not. And that the time is 4:19 p.m. So that concludes our review session.
Thank you very much.
Bye.